Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, American Comics. Under Loki, the Frozen Fruit Ability. Chapter 81. No, Father, you can't do this to me. I am the hero who defeated Jotunheim for Asgard. I am the hero of Asgard. In the royal palace of Asgard, Thor, who was deprived of Mjolnir by god King Odin and had the magic power sealed in his body, was being escorted by 2 Asgard guards at the moment and walking towards the gate of the royal palace. Thor himself probably did not expect that as the eldest prince of Asgard, he would one day end up in such a state. At this time, Anna, who had been standing next to Odin, walked up and comforted Thor. "Uncle, don't worry. When I get to Midgard, I will contact a friend of my father's lifetime, and he will take care of you in Midgard, of Gad's life. When the time comes, you can rest assured and reform down there, and strive to return to Asgard as soon as possible. Grandpa does all this for your own good. You have to understand Grandpa's good intentions." Hearing that even his niece agreed to Odin's decision to exile him to the mortal world, Thor suddenly felt that his life had lost its color. Just now, he was complaining to Anna in the garden about Elsa's indecision in dealing with Lof. As a result, he turned around and was taken to the palace by Anna. Then Odin sealed the magic power in his body without saying a word and took Mjolnir away. This made Thor feel that his trust in Anna was completely misplaced. The once cute little niece could now learn the backstabbing tricks of her father Loki. The distraught Thor stopped struggling and allowed Asgard's guards to drag him out and take him to Shimming Castle at the end of Bifrost. If Thor knew that Odin's idea of turning him into a mortal and exiled to the mortal world was actually proposed by Anna, he would probably collapse even more. And Loki, who hid his existence through complete hypnotic ability, also witnessed the whole process in the royal palace. Loki also felt dumbfounded about Anna's suggestion to Odin to exile Thor. Because according to his original plan, and with Thor's impulsive temper, Elsa did not choose to execute Lof, Thor would definitely not be able to help but do it secretly. Then he used this as an opportunity to once again trigger the conflict between Asgard and Jotunheim, leaving Thor with an unforgettable lesson. In the end, in order to quell the anger between the people of the two countries, Thor was exiled to Midgard to sharpen his mind in the mortal world. But what Loki didn't expect was that before Thor could make a big mistake, his daughter had sold her uncle out for the sake of her own future. He directly skipped the steps in the middle that made Thor make a mistake, and demoted Thor to the mortal world. Although Anna's unexpected intervention caused Thor to skip part of the training this time, it didn't do any harm judging from the results. In any case, Thor's experience of being exiled to Earth this time is at least much better than the situation in the original plot. Originally, Odin planned to let Heimdall find any open place in Midgard and leave the person there. But Anna suggested that she knew a very well-connected and very wise elder in Midgard. Perhaps she could ask him to help take care of him and also give Thor some training. Odin thought for a moment and felt that what Anna said made sense. After all, according to Thor's temper, if he was asked to start upgrading from a whiteboard account in Midgard, he would probably have to stop within a week. And the acquaintance Anna wants to entrust Thor to is none other than Howard Stark, an old friend of their family. Midgard, Malibu Coast. This is the location of Howard's California villa. Anna brought Thor, who had been expelled by Odin, to the gate of Stark Manor. In fact, Anna is not sure whether Howard is here now. After all, the other party has many things to do every day. Stark Industries and the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency are inseparable from Howard's leadership. But she and Thor seemed to be lucky today. The person who opened the door for them was the Stark family's butler, Jarvis. While Jarvis serves as a butler, he is also Howard's driver and bodyguard. Since I saw him here today, it means that Howard must be in the manor. However, after entering the manor, the first person they saw was not Howard, but his wife Maria. Seeing Anna, whom she hadn't seen for a long time, Maria, who had watched her grow up, took her into her arms and asked her in detail about every detail of her life over the years. Anna also felt warmed by Maria's concern. In Anna's eyes, Maria can be said to be her second mother. Thor was the only one standing nearby, looking very embarrassed. Seeing that more than half an hour had passed and Maria still showed no signs of stopping, Thor could only pretend to cough a few times to remind the two of his presence. Hearing Thor's dry coughs, Anna remembered that she had brought a living person with her. Oh, I forgot to introduce you, Aunt Maria. This is my father's brother, my uncle, Thor Odinson. I brought him here to visit today. I want to ask Uncle Howard. Quote, Maria nodded, looked at the muscular Thor beside her, and couldn't help but reach out and squeeze his triceps. Anna, you take good care of your family. I haven't seen any changes in Loki and Sif over the years. I didn't expect your uncle to look so young. If you hadn't introduced him to me, I would have thought he was your brother. Anna, if you have any secret recipe, you can't hide it from me. Look, because of that stinky boy Stark, Auntie, my face has been stained recently. There are a few more wrinkles to Jiao Jiao. Anna really didn't know how to answer Maria's question. After all, her family was not from Midgard, so she only told Howard. Maria obviously didn't know about this. He. Well, this may be hereditary, there is no secret recipe. Our family members all look very young, he. Hearing Anna's explanation, Maria sighed with some disappointment. Oh, that's really enviable. Well, since you are here to see Howard, I will take you to his study to sit for a while. At this moment, he is probably addicted to his own experiments again. If no one calls him, he can stay in there for several days without eating or drinking. Little Anna, I heard that you have something to ask me for. Anna and Thor waited in the study for a long time before Howard opened the door and walked in from the outside. It can be seen from the white coat on his body and the messy stubble on his face that Howard has indeed been in the laboratory for a while. Anna was not embarrassed about Howard's straightforward inquiry and directly told him the purpose of her trip. This is my uncle, Thor Odinson. Uncle Howard, please take in this incompetent uncle of mine, Anna said while making a 90-degree bow to Howard. Then he glanced at Thor with his peripheral vision and found that the other person was still standing there stupidly. He quickly got up and pressed Thor's neck, pressing him down and bowing to Howard again. Thor, whose magic power is sealed by Odin, is no match for Anna, who has the strength of level sub-godfather. No matter how much he struggled, he could only bow his head in front of Howard, a mortal in his eyes. But even so, Thor did not dare to make any dissatisfied noise at this time. After all, in front of Howard, an outsider, if he knew that he couldn't stand up to his little niece, wouldn't it be a joke? So even if Anna forced his head to bow to Howard, Thor could only resist secretly and did not dare to say anything. Loki's brother. Ward looked at Thor, who had blonde hair, a beard, and a tall and muscular figure, and it seemed difficult to connect him with Loki's Swansea identity. Well, my dad was adopted by my grandfather, Anna explained. Howard suddenly realized, that's it. This is indeed the only reason. Otherwise, as brothers, the gap between the two would be too big. Loki is smart and elegant, and knows how to use all the power that can be used for him. On the other hand, your Uncle Thor, based on my observation after coming in, should be impulsive and reckless, always thinking of solving problems with his own muscles. Are you raising people? PFF'd. Forgive Anna for laughing unkindly after hearing Howard's description. Uncle Howard, your guess is really accurate. After saying that, Anna gave Howard a thumbs up. A world where only Thor was injured was achieved. Howard waved his hand. It's not all a guess. Your father has also mentioned some things related to Thor to me before. It's just this meeting that made me more certain of my previous judgment. AHBH, but last time I heard your sister Aisha said that your country had some troubles, so it would leave the earth for a while. Now Anna, come to me with Thor, has the problem been solved? Anna nodded and said, everything has been resolved successfully, but now that Elsa has taken over her father's job, it is estimated that there will not be many opportunities to return here in the future. Hearing Anna's answer, Thor on the side curled his lips in disdain and muttered in a low voice, what has been solved smoothly? Loth, the culprit, is still running around outside. On the contrary, I, the hero who ended the war. I was exiled to this shabby place where no one has shit. Although Thor has lowered the volume, Howard's study is only so large and the room is soundproofed. In addition, the three of them were not far from each other, so both Anna and Howard clearly heard what Thor said. Now I know why your uncle was kicked out by your grandfather. Howard looked at Anna and said with sympathy. Alas, Anna could only sigh helplessly. As an uncle, not only is my IQ low, but my emotional intelligence is even worse. Hey, what do you mean, you mortal? How dare you look down on me, Thor? Although he didn't quite understand what Howard's words meant, Thor could vaguely understand that they were not good words. However, Thor's resistance was immediately suppressed by Anna. This time Anna directly pressed Thor and made a 180-degree fold. Thor's whole body was so suppressed that he almost couldn't breathe, let alone continue to speak. Uncle Howard, look at the situation. It is such a situation. In fact, what we say here is how we say it. Let's say it, that's how we say it, right, yes. Howard looked at where Anna was, talking in ghost language, unable to grasp the point, so he directly took over the topic and said, "We are just talking about your uncle's future life on Earth. Let me take care of it. Don't worry, Anna. As long as your uncle lives on Earth for one day, I, Howard Stark, cannot guarantee anything else. But clothes, bags, and houses, car, I can even give him a new one. Do you think this is too hot? Uncle Howard, you are truly an eternal god. Ha ha ha, what else?" Howard accepted Anna's compliment generously. "But actually, you don't have to be too nice to my uncle. After all, my grandfather asked him to come to Earth to experience life. If he lives too comfortably, it will have no effect. You don't need to arrange any special care for him. Even if he doesn't eat, starves to death, or jumps from here, you don't care about him. My uncle has no other advantages. His body and mind are very resistant to stress. If there is any hard work, you can directly arrange it for him. If he cannot complete the task, his salary will be deducted. Let him do it. My uncle also has a good understanding of how difficult life is for ordinary people." Hearing Anna encouraging Howard to torture himself, Thor couldn't believe his ears. Is this still the cute little niece he held in his arms? Why has she grown up to be even more vicious than her father? But since Anna made such a request, Howard naturally agreed with a pat on his chest. "Don't worry, Anna, listening to what you mean, I will just treat Thor as if he is that incompetent guy Tony. That's all I have to do. Good at it. Well, Thor will stay with me for the time being and be my bodyguard. After he becomes more familiar with life on Earth, I will arrange some other tasks for him to ensure that the next time you see Thor, he has already reborn." "Thank you so much, Uncle Howard," Anna said, and bowed deeply to Howard. But Thor asked weakly from the side, Can I ask, who is this Tony?" "Howard. Oh, that's my son." Hearing this, Thor suddenly had a premonition that his life on Earth seemed to have a dark future. Facts have proved that Howard Stark is indeed a super genius who built two behemoths, Stark Industries and Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency, from scratch. His vision of looking at people is absolutely accurate and unique. Especially after he brought Thor back to the Bureau, found several experienced and skilled agents, and tested Thor's actual combat ability, Howard was even more satisfied with the decision to let Thor serve as his bodyguard. "Although I've guessed from your figure that your skills are definitely not simple, your actual combat ability still exceeds my expectations. Those just now are some of the best combat agents in our Bureau, but in front of you they are like elementary school students versus college students, they have no ability to fight back." Howard looked at Thor beside him and said excitedly, completely ignoring Thor's despairing expression, "By the way, you can't use your full strength with bare hands like this. How about I take you to the shooting range to test it and see what kind of firearm you like to use?" As Howard said that, he took Thor's arm and took him to the shooting range for testing. But with Howard's strength, there is no way he can pull off the tall and mighty Thor. Thor shook Howard's hand away, shook his head and refused. "I don't need that kind of thing, I'm not used to it. Do you have any cold weapons that can be handy?" For Thor, who is accustomed to using hammers, the hot weapons on Earth are indeed not as useful as cold weapons such as swords. After all, if he holds a gun in his hand, he may not be able to hit the enemy, but if he has a hammer in his hand, Thor's hit rate will definitely not be weaker than that of the captain of the United States holding a shield. So Howard changed his destination and took Thor to the arsenal of the Logistics Support Bureau. For agents of the Logistics Support Bureau who need to adapt to various mission conditions, it is not enough to master firearms and ammunition. They must also be proficient in various cold weapons and even unarmed combat skills. These cold weapons in the arsenal are made of special metals provided by Stark Industries. Both in terms of toughness and strength, their specifications are far beyond the best products available on the market. But even so, these weapons in the Logistics Support Bureau are still too fragile for Thor, who has used artifacts like Mjolnir. When Thor picked up one of the daggers for testing, he hadn't even swung it a few times when the dagger couldn't withstand his rough use and broke into 2 pieces. Thor then tried several weapons one after another, including swords, guns, swords, halberds, axes, hooks and forks, but none of them could last a minute in Thor's hands. "No, Howard, the quality of the weapons you have here is too poor. How can I use this kind of thing to protect your safety?" Howard was unable to refute Thor's comments. Who made the materials for these weapons come from his family's Stark Industries. After thinking for a while, Howard said to Thor, "It seems that we can't find any weapons suitable for you in our bureau. However, there are 2 weapons in my company's office that may be able to satisfy you requirements." Oh, Howard's words aroused Thor's curiosity. "Isn't it possible that when I arrived at your office later, what I brought out was this kind of inferior product? I don't think that with your Midgardian ability, you can create. I am satisfied with Wooloo." Howard did not make any refutation of Thor's contempt. After all, with the current technological level of the Earth, there is still a huge amount of gap with the interstellar civilization like Asgard that rules the universe. However, regarding Thor's doubts, Howard was very confident. "Don't worry, these 2 weapons are not from the Earth." After hearing what Howard said, Thor became even more interested in these 2 mysterious weapons, and quickly pulled Howard toward the parking lot. "Then what are you waiting for? Take me there and have a look." Thor, who had lost his magic power in Mjolnir, now urgently needs a magical weapon that can bring him some sense of security. So the 2 set off again in the car, heading towards the Stark Industrial headquarters. Definitely, Howard, the employer, was driving this time, and Thor, the bodyguard, sat in the passenger seat like an uncle. There's no way. Why did Thor not have a driver's license? Fortunately, although Howard is usually driven by Jarvis, Original is also an experienced driver. The 2 of them drove the vehicle and soon arrived at Stark Industries headquarters and entered Howard's office here. As soon as Thor entered Howard's office, he saw the long sword hanging behind the desk. It was a typical one-handed cross sword. The spine of the sword showed a mysterious black color, and the blade shone with sharp silver light. The main body of the sword is made of high-profile gold with pure black, and the hilt is wrapped in the same black leather. However, a lavender gem embellished at the head of the sword makes the sword look particularly noble and noble. "What's the name of this sword?" Thor saw the unusualness of this sword at a glance and quickly asked Howard. Howard introduced Thor to Thor like a treasure trove of treasures. "It's called Durandal. It's the sword of the legendary paladin Roland. It has the reputation of Angel's Sword. At the same time, because of its indestructible characteristics, it is also called the Blade of Immortality and the Sword of Eternity. This is the meeting gift he and Sif gave me when Loki and I first met. At that time, he told me that he was an archaeologist, and this was an imitation they copied based on the description in ancient books. So after I got the sword, I kept hanging it in my office as a handicraft. If Elsa hadn't revealed your family's origins to me later, I'm afraid I would never have discovered the value of this divine sword." After saying that, Howard came behind the desk, took Durandal off the wall, and handed it to Thor. "How about it? Do you want to try it?" Looking at the holy sword Durandal handed over by Howard, a look of surprise flashed in Thor's eyes, and he involuntarily reached out and took the sword. As soon as he picked up the long sword, the cold touch and the texture of the falling hand made Thor feel the unusualness of Durandal. It is said that the edge of a sword is sharpened, but this holy sword has been hanging in Howard's office for more than 20 years. Even though it has never been used in actual combat, the fact that it has not shown any rust for 20 years shows the original quality of this sword. Thor held the sword in front of him, and then pulled out a blank piece of paper from Howard's desk. Put the white paper gently on the blade of the sword, and then blow it gently with your mouth. The white paper split into 2 halves instantly. Howard didn't show any surprise when he saw this scene. As early as 10 years ago, Howard had studied this sword after realizing that it might be valuable. But so far, Howard has not studied to find out why Durandal can have such an indestructible characteristic. At first, Howard wondered whether this sword was made of the same magical metal called vibranium like the shield he made for the captain of the United States. But after he used a microscope to observe the metal materials used in every part of the entire sword, he found nothing special. Even Howard could say with certainty that this holy sword Durandal was forged from ordinary steel. In this case, there is only one possibility left for the reason why Durandal can be immortal. That is, there is a mysterious calendar area in this sword that Howard cannot understand yet. And this power should be what Loki and others call magic. Howard was not surprised by Durandal's performance, but Thor was extremely excited. After the white paper was cut into 2 pieces by Durandal, Thor turned his wrist slightly, and the sword blade once again cut across the 2 pieces of paper floating in the air. Thor's move was extremely fast, but even when the blade touched the paper, it didn't make any sound. But the 2 pieces of paper that were originally floating in the air had turned into 4 pieces when they landed. Seeing this, Thor's fiery heart could no longer hold back, and he pulled Howard out of the office. "Howard, you have to find a spacious place for me. Your office is too small. I can't even use it to test the performance of this sword." How could Thor's little idea be hidden from Howard? He said he wanted to test the performance, but looking at the impatient expression on his face, it was obvious that he was overjoyed and his hands were itchy. However, Howard did not expose him. It happened that Howard also wanted to know what kind of performance Durandal could perform in the hands of a master like Thor. Howard led Thor, and the 2 of them came to a weapons testing site underground in the building. This place is usually used to test light thermal weapons. Today, it is used for Thor to test Durandal, a cold weapon. It is more than enough. Seeing such a large venue, Thor didn't say anything, waved Durandal in his hand and rushed toward the end of the testing venue. There are steel plates and cement blocks that are usually used for firearms testing. It is difficult for ordinary large-caliber firepower weapons to penetrate these targets. But when they met Durandal in Thor's hand, 1 or 2 of them seemed to have turned into tofu. Thor didn't even realize how hard he was exerting himself, the sword just penetrated right through. The thick concrete pillars and special steel plates, in front of Durandal, didn't feel much better than the white paper in Howard's office just now. After some testing, Thor couldn't put it down with the Durandal in his hand. That is to say, Mjolnir is not here now. Otherwise, if the hammer sees Thor like this, he will definitely fly up and give this new weary master a beating. However, although he was very satisfied with Durandal's performance, Thor was not a swordsman specializing in swordsmanship after all, so he did not make an immediate decision. "Durandal, yes, it's a good sword. Loki is really good too. I grew up with him, and I never saw him give me anything. As a result, when he met you for the first time, he acted like this. I've got a big treasure for you, this guy is really annoying. By the way, Howard, you said there is another weapon here that may meet my requirements, right? Come on, take it out and let me try it. Only after trying it can I make a choice." Howard nodded and said with a smile, "If you think it's handy, it's not impossible to bring both of them. This other weapon, actually, was a gift from Anna to my boy. But then he went to study abroad, so the thing was temporarily left here with me. I have studied that weapon before, and it was not made of any materials known on Earth. I guess Anna brought it from your hometown." After Howard finished speaking, he walked to the entrance of the testing venue and dialed a phone number. After a while, a bald white man held 10 boxes and handed them to Howard. "Thanks, Obi. If it were anyone else, I probably wouldn't be able to find where Tony put this thing, so I thought I could only trouble you." "Okay, Howard, the things have been brought to you. I have to go back to the office to continue processing the documents. Recently, the Ministry of National Defense has placed a big order for us. I have to finalize the matter quickly." After saying that, the bald white man didn't even look at Thor, turned around, entered the elevator and left. Howard took the box that the man handed him and came to Thor. "Look, this is the second weapon." Thor let go of Durandal, the sharp blade sank directly into the ground. He eagerly took the box and opened it. But as soon as he saw what was in the box, Thor was stunned. His eyes widened and he looked at the weapon in the box in disbelief. His mouth trembled and he uttered a few words with difficulty. "Wonderful. Mjolnir." Placed in the box, the second weapon Howard mentioned was an imitation of Mjolnir, which Thor was so familiar with. That is to say, when the Howard family left New York, Anna specially found a dwarf craftsman to make a hammer imitating Thor's Mjolnir. But unlike Thor's war hammer, the one Anna gave Tony was actually a forging hammer. Definitely, in terms of appearance alone, there is no obvious difference between the two hammers. Even though it's hard to tell from the appearance, Thor has been partnered with Mjolnir for more than 1,000 years, so you can still tell the difference between genuine and fake by feeling. It turns out to be an imposter, Thor said with some disappointment after confirming that the hammer Howard took out was not his Mjolnir. But think about it, Mjolnir should have been taken into the treasure house by Odin and guarded by Odin. How could it appear in the hands of a Midgardian? Although the one Howard took out was a counterfeit, it did not have the real Mjolnir's ability to automatically return to the owner's hand and summon thunder and lightning. But because it is made by dwarf craftsmen in Nidavel, it is still stronger and more durable than weapons on Earth. Thor grasped the hammer's handle and picked it up from the box. Feeling the texture of the sledgehammer in his hand, Thor said without hesitation, "There is no need to choose. As expected, the hammer is the most convenient weapon for me." Although this fake Mjolnir is definitely not as lethal as Durandal, he just likes swinging the sledgehammer. So after seeing that the second weapon Howard took out turned out to be a hammer, Thor had already made a decision silently in his heart even though he hadn't tested it yet. Thor held the hammer in his hand again, and suddenly felt a sense of security in his heart. The look of despair on his face when he was exiled to the earth turned into a silly smile at this moment. "Okay, Thor, don't be in a daze. Now that the weapon has been selected, hurry up and get in the car with me to pick up Maria. If you're late, I'll be in trouble tonight." Seeing Thor still stroking the hammer he just received like a crazy man, Howard quickly stepped forward and pulled him towards the parking lot. "Where are we going?" Thor asked Howard slowly until the two of them got into the car together. "Long Island, New York. I'm secretly conducting an interesting research there, and I've recently made a breakthrough. It just so happens that Maria is going to New York to attend an event as a representative of Stark Industries today. We'll pick Maria up in the car first, and then drop by. Take the research results with you as well." Howard didn't tell Thor what the so-called interesting research was, and Thor was definitely not interested in it either. But what Howard didn't know was that the secret research that he thought he had done a good job of keeping secret was actually being watched by a pair of mysterious eyes. "Sir," Howard set off from Stark Industries with his new bodyguards. "Follow him closely. I have already contacted Colonel Vasily of KGB. They will send winter soldiers to support him. Remember to get the thing he is researching. It's Sir Hydra Hail." Hydra Hail. Just behind the car that Howard and Thor were riding in, a black car that could not see the inside of the car through the window glass followed them. Hydra, an evil organization that should have been swept into the dustbin of history at the end of World War II, was able to be reborn in the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency because of the so-called Paperclip Project of the United States. As the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Bureau has continued to grow over the years, Hydra has become more powerful, even exceeding their peak size during World War II. And through the so-called Justice shell of the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency, Hydra can easily penetrate into the top levels of governments of various countries and obtain all kinds of information they need. It was under such circumstances that Howard's secret research was exposed to Hydra. The research conducted by Howard on Long Island, New York, is actually not new. Dr. Abraham Erskine had successfully completed the research 40 years ago. That's right. What Howard is studying is the super soldier serum that helped Steve Rogers counterattack from an emaciated sickly boy to become the captain of the United States. Since 40 years ago, Hydra has been trying to obtain the super soldier serum and use it to create a powerful army of super soldiers to rule the world. But with the death of Dr. Erskine and the destruction of the last dose of the serum, the super soldier serum without leaving a formula record has since become an unsolved mystery. No one knows how to replicate the serum in Captain United States, success on your body. However, there is no shortage of geniuses in this world, and Howard is undoubtedly the smartest one currently recognized in the world. By reverse engineering the blood samples retained by Steve Rogers, Howard spent decades and finally brought Dr. Erskine's super soldier serum back to the world. Howard even believed that the version he made was more perfect than the super soldier serum used by Steve Rogers. Because this version of his serum can take effect directly through intravenous injection, and the user does not need to be exposed to high-energy rays. Hydra was definitely even more excited when they learned about this. In order to ensure that they could successfully seize this research result from Howard, Hydra even contacted KGB and sent the Winter Soldier to assist. This shows that they are very interested in this research. Attention to actions. Howard drove the vehicle eastward with Thor from day to night, just in time to catch up with Maria coming out of the hotel after attending the dinner. Thor very wisely gave up his passenger seat and got into the back seat, and then the owner took the car together to Howard's secret laboratory on Long Island, New York. Thor followed the two men and brought out a black suitcase from the laboratory. Taking the suitcase, the three quickly got into the car and left. Finally, we got the things successfully, but Thor and I have been in the car all day today. We will stay in the villa in New York to rest for one night, and then return to California tomorrow. Howard suggested. Thor definitely doesn't have a problem with it, since he's just a hired worker no matter where he is. Maria also excitedly agreed to Howard's proposal. If you think about it carefully, we haven't stayed in that villa for a long time. I still remember that we had parties with Sif and the others in the villa every weekend. Yeah, back then. Howard was also brought back memories by Maria's words. He was about to reminisce about those years together, but was suddenly interrupted by Thor. Howard, drive faster. There seems to be someone following us. As Thor finished speaking, the atmosphere in the car instantly became tense. Howard stepped on the accelerator pedal, and the car instantly accelerated and sped forward. However, looking through the rearview mirror, one could still clearly catch a dark figure, following closely behind them. Howard could even clearly hear the sound of the other party's engine entering his ears from outside the car. The other party was driving a military motorcycle, and at our speed we couldn't get away from him. Howard quickly judged the car type following them based on the sound of the engine, and analyzed the current situation. Since we can't hide, let's confront him head-on. Hearing this, Thor also made a prompt decision. If the car is attacked by the other party and loses control while driving at high speed, the situation will become more dangerous. Howard, you park the car on the side of the road later and hide in the car with Maria. I'll go down and see who the other person is. After saying that, Thor had already grasped the handle of the sledgehammer with his right hand, and put his left back on the door handle of the car door. Once Howard parked the car, Thor rushed out of the car as fast as he could. Howard was very skilled in driving. He released the accelerator, stepped on the clutch, braked to slow down, and stopped the car steadily on the side of the road. It was late at night, and there were not many vehicles or pedestrians passing by on the road they chose, which made it easier for Thor to fight with the other party later. As Howard stopped the car, the motorcycle that had been following them also slowed down and stopped not far behind them. It was only then that Thor finally saw the person clearly with the help of the dim moonlight. There was only one person on the other side, wearing a military uniform, with half-length black hair parted in the middle, and a very stern appearance. This man gave Thor the feeling that he was more like a killing machine than a cold-blooded killer. In particular, his left hand is not a normal flesh and blood body, but a mechanical arm made of all metal, which adds to the dangerous aura exuding from his body. This is the super soldier created by KGB and born entirely to complete the mission, the Winter Soldier. Howard, who was hiding in the car, also saw the phantom of the Winter Soldier through the car window, but the darkness and the dimness of his old eyes prevented him from seeing the Winter Soldier's face clearly. But when Howard looked at the other person's figure, he always felt very familiar. Just when he was about to take a closer look, the figure of the Winter Soldier flashed and began to attack Thor. Winter Soldier waved the iron wall in his left hand and punched Thor on the head. But how could Thor, who had experienced many battles, be hit so easily? Although Thor has not developed much brain in more than 1,000 years, his muscles are actually forged on the battlefield. Thor raised his arm to block and easily blocked Winter Soldier's steel arm with his arm of flesh and blood. But it wasn't over yet. The defense was just to prepare for the next attack. After Thor blocked the punch with his left arm, he directly grabbed Winter Soldier's wrist with his backhand. Then he swung the sledgehammer he had been holding in his right hand and struck Winter Soldier on the chin. But Winter Soldier's reaction speed is also not slow. As a super soldier who has undergone human body modification, facing Thor who has lost his artifact and magic power, Winter Soldier will not be instantly killed by Thor as soon as he meets him. He leaned back and avoided Thor's sledgehammer. Immediately afterwards, he directly put his right hand on the ground and kicked Thor's heart upward. Facing the athlete's foot, Thor was unable to dodge for a moment, and was kicked away by Winter Soldier, hitting the trunk of the car. If it were someone else who had been hit by Winter Soldier, they would have fainted or even died due to cardiac arrest. But for Thor, this kick only caused some pain in his chest. It wasn't even enough to hurt him. So Thor, who landed on the trunk of the car, didn't pause at all. He turned over and rushed towards Winter Soldier to start the second round of confrontation. Winter Soldier also hurriedly fought back and returned to a standing posture, guarding against Thor's attack. Clang! This time, Thor took the lead and struck down with a hammer, but Winter Soldier blocked it with the iron arm of his left hand. But although Thor's blow was blocked by the Winter Soldier, don't forget that on one side is a hammer made by the dwarf craftsmen of Nidavel, and on the other side is a mechanical arm made of alloys from the earth. How could Winter Soldier's robotic arm remain unscathed after being hit by Thor's hammer? Sure enough, when he looked again the next second, he saw that the mechanical arm on Winter Soldier's left hand that was so flexible just now was already flashing with electric sparks and hanging down by his side. It is obvious that it has lost its ability to move due to the damage caused by Thor's hammer just now. Without the assistance of this mechanical arm, the threat that Winter Soldier can pose to Thor drops sharply. At the same time, Howard in the car finally saw the other party's true face with the help of the light brought by the electric spark on the Winter Soldier's left mechanical arm. But this fact made Howard's eyes widen in disbelief, because he did know the true identity of the other party, and this person had died more than 40 years ago. Sergeant Barnes, Sergeant James Barnes, a member of the Howling Commandos. He was the closest comrade in arms and the strongest supporter of Captain the United States in World War II. But during a mission against Hydra, he fell from a train into a valley and died. These are the records of James Barnes in the United States Captain's Memorial Hall. But such a hero, who was originally thought to have been sacrificed, now appeared alive in front of Howard. Moreover, the other party's appearance is still as young as before, and it seems that time has not passed on his good body at all. How is this possible? If all of this is true, does that mean Steve might also be? Thor outside the car naturally knew nothing about Howard's shock. Now that Winter Soldier has lost his robotic arm, Thor must take advantage of the victory and rush to Winter Soldier to deal damage. Unexpectedly, Winter Soldier, who knew it was difficult to fight back, put all his energy into dodging, and was able to avoid Thor's fatal attack. Although he was still inevitably hit by Thor, as long as there was no fatal blow, Winter Soldier still had a chance to come back. You must know that in this operation against Howard and the Super Soldier Serum, in addition to him, there were also people from Hydra involved. Faced with the Winter Soldier's slippery fighting style, Thor, who was already impatient, became more and more impatient when he took action. Winter Soldier also noticed Thor's emotional changes and began to use his dodge to provoke Thor's emotions. Under this situation, Winter Soldier's success rate in evading attacks became higher and higher. On the contrary, Thor consumed a lot of energy due to his too hasty attacks. In the past, when Mjolnir was still in hand, Thor's style of play would definitely have no problem, and he could make up for it with the help of the magic weapon. But the current situation is that not only has Thor been deprived of his artifact, but his magic power has also been sealed. Under the premise of protecting Howard and Maria, if the opponent cannot be eliminated as soon as possible, the situation will become increasingly unfavorable for the three Thors. While Thor was still entangled with the Winter Soldier, poof! A strange sound suddenly occurred. Thor didn't know what this sound meant, but Howard, as a master of weapons invention, couldn't help but know. That was the sound of a bullet passing through a tire and the tire being punctured. Thor, be careful, the other party has accomplices, Howard reminded loudly. As soon as Howard finished speaking, bullets were fired at the car where he and Maria were sitting. All the windows in the car were shattered instantly, and huge amounts of craters were left on the metal casing. Fortunately, Howard had already sensed the danger in advance, pressed Maria's body, and bent down to avoid it. Under the protection of the car body, both of them were not injured by bullets for the time being. However, Thor and the Winter Soldier outside the car were in a worse situation. Hydra's shooting was completely indiscriminate, and there was no cover in front of them. Although with their super reaction speed, Thor and Winter Soldier both fell to the ground and rolled to avoid the bullets at the first moment, but many bullets and stray bullets still passed by their bodies, leaving behind a trail of blood. Hey, ever since I was exiled to Midgard by my father, nothing has gone smoothly for me. Thor, as a majestic Thor, the eldest prince of Asgard, when have I ever been so embarrassed? While constantly dodging, Thor rolled several times and came to Howard's car parked on the roadside. He reached out to open the back seat door, gave Howard and Maria a warning, and then pulled the entire door off. With this car door as a shield, Thor quickly confirmed the location of the gunmen who were ambushing around. Judging from the flash of muzzle fire when they fired, the other party deployed firepower in front of Howard and on the left and right sides respectively. This means that the other party ambushed at least 3 people. Coupled with the attack of the metal arm at the back, it really doesn't give me any chance of survival. But now the tire has been blown out and there are no vehicles passing by, so now we can only bite the bullet. First deal with the guy with the metal arm, and then deal with the firepower points that pose the greatest threat to us. After making a plan in his mind, Thor took action immediately without any hesitation. The reason why Winter Soldier was chosen as the primary target was because one of Winter Soldier's mechanical arms had been disabled by him before, and later he was injured by a bullet from his own accomplice. On the other hand, it was because the 3 firepower points lurking around were a bit far away from them. If Winter Soldier takes advantage of his departure to attack Howard and Maria, then he has no way of caring about their safety. And at the moment Thor acted, Winter Soldier seemed to have insight into his thoughts at the same moment. So Winter Soldier rushed towards his motorcycle parked on the side of the road without any hesitation, then turned around and ran away. Thor was completely stunned when he saw Winter Soldier's behavior. No, why did you run away? Looking at Winter Soldier's expressionless face, looking like a pure killing machine, Thor thought that this kind of person would never give up until he achieves his goal. But I didn't expect that the other party saw that something was going wrong, so he directly rubbed oil on the soles of his feet and ran away. But what Thor doesn't know is that the Winter Soldier, as a big treasure accidentally picked up by the KG, will definitely not let him suffer here just for the sake of cooperation with Hydra. The reason why the Winter Soldier was able to show such strong strength and even fight with Thor for dozens of rounds is definitely partly due to KGB, but the most important thing is that during World War II, he was still a lieutenant commander of Barnes. When he was a soldier, he was taken as a prisoner by Hydra and transformed into a super soldier. Although judging from the results, it is not as perfect as the Captain of the United States, but it is enough to give him a physical fitness that is far beyond ordinary people. Because of this, after Barnes fell into the valley and lost an arm, the KGB who accidentally discovered him brought him back to the base, installed a robotic arm, and transformed him into the current Winter Soldier. Without the Winter Soldier standing by to pose a threat, Thor can target enemy fire points in the distance. Thor raised the car door that he tore off in his hand, and rushed towards one of the fire points despite the constant bullets. Once the distance between the two sides is within Thor's attack range, the offensive and defensive momentum becomes easy. Thor first destroyed the enemy's offensive firearm with a hammer, then opened the car door and slapped the enemy directly on the forehead. The next second, this enemy fell into a baby-like sleep, and he couldn't wake up no matter how he screamed. After one of the firepower points is solved, the remaining 2 will be easy to deal with. Thor did not use the same attack method, but directly used his best throwing skills. He aimed the sledgehammer in his hand and the car door that was easily torn off in the direction of the remaining 2 fire points, and then launched a powerful attack. Miracle! Exclamation mark. Clang. After 2 consecutive crisp sounds, the firepower attacking Howard finally stopped, and the surrounding environment returned to its original silence again. Forget that this hammer is not Mjolnir, it won't fly back to my hand on its own. Oh, I have to discredit and run over to find him later. Although he lost his beloved little hammer again, Thor did not immediately go to look for it. Instead, he immediately ran to Howard and the 2 of them and asked about their condition. Howard, Maria, are you 2 okay? Seeing Thor's return, Howard let out a long breath. Huh. Thanks to you being here, we both won't die for the time being. Thor, that's good, what should we do next? The tires were blown out by the other party, and the car can't drive. Howard, don't worry, I just contacted the rescue and it should be here soon. Let's wait here for a while. I didn't expect that because of Anna's trouble, Thor was exiled to the Earth 20 years early, but he accidentally saved the lives of the Howards. Loki, who had been watching the whole process secretly, was still a little surprised by what happened today. Because he has been focusing all his energy on the Asgard collapse plan and the training of his two daughters these years, he almost forgot that the Howards still have such a big disaster. As an old friend of Howard and Maria, Loki is indeed a bit derelict in his role as a friend. Fortunately, Thor came across this matter, otherwise Loki would regret it too much. Finally, Howard and Maria were escorted to the hospital by the belated police. And Thor, who had recovered the hammer, was definitely following the two of them, just in case the enemy came back with a carbine. Thor will be taken care of by Howard here in Midgard, so there shouldn't be any big problem. But to be on the safe side, it's better to add another amulet to the three of them. In the face of the full effect of hypnotic ability, Loki came to Thor in such a swagger, but the other party didn't notice it at all. Loki left a triggering illusion on Thor's body. Once Thor encounters any fatal danger, this illusion will be triggered, causing the enemy to temporarily fall into chaos. After Thor was done, Loki repeated the operation on Howard and Maria, leaving a triggering illusion on both of them. This illusion should be able to buy them enough time to respond in an emergency. After dealing with Thor's side of things, Loki will no longer focus on Thor's side for a long time. I believe that as long as his plan proceeds step by step, it will not be difficult to complete the system tasks. What Loki needs to pay more attention to now is how the affairs between Jotunheim and Asgard will end after his Asgard collapse plan. After all, this entire plan was conceived, planned, and implemented by him alone. Although Odin knew that he would cause trouble, the specific details were not clear. Now, in order to complete the system's task and Odin's request, Loki has done such a big thing and then tricked everyone into announcing that it was actually a prank on his part. Loki could already imagine what the reputation he had spent 1,000 years building up would look like afterwards. But Loki has no choice. He can't let all the people of Jotunheim and Asgard live in a mirror image created by complete hypnotic ability. Now that Elsa and Anna's experiences have been completed, and Thor has been sent to Midgard in advance, it's time to reveal the truth and let everyone return to normal life. In fact, even if the truth is announced, all this will have no impact on the ordinary people of the two countries. Because all the previous injuries and sacrifices were all illusions under complete hypnotic ability. The only people who find it harder to accept the truth are probably those closest to Loki. Shein, Odin, Frigga, Elsa and Anna. 2-level godfathers and 3-level sub-godfathers have to face the censure and questioning of these 5 people. Just think about it and you know how much pressure it must be. Just when Loki decided to return to Asgard and die generously, Howard in the ward was planning their death with Maria. Tonight's attack made Howard suspicious of the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency for the first time in his life. Because the enemy's target tonight is obviously for him and the super soldier serum he developed. If Thor hadn't happened to be with him, he and Maria would have been in the hands of the enemy tonight. And the only ones who could so clearly grasp the whereabouts of him, the founder of the Strategic Homeland Attack Defense and Logistics Bureau, were colleagues who also worked in the Bureau. In other words, there is a mole among them. Now that his success in replicating the super soldier serum has been leaked, the enemy will definitely not give up until they achieve their goal. If he and Maria Fu were lucky enough to escape tonight, then the enemy's arrangements would definitely become more thorough next time. 0. By then, they may not be as lucky as they are today. So after Howard suspected that there was a mole in the Bureau, he began to plan in his mind how he and Maria could fake their own death and escape. But, if both of us fake our own deaths, what should Tony do? He is still a child. And Thor, Anna entrusted him to us. If we all die, who should take care of him? What about him? Regarding Howard's plan, Maria raised her own questions. Don't worry, I have already made arrangements for Tony and Thor. Howard responded. First of all, I have to correct you, Maria. Tony is an adult, not a child. When I was his age, I had already started a business from scratch. And the death of the two of us might stimulate him to become more mature. Besides, no matter what, there is Obadiah in the company. With him watching over Tony, there won't be any problems. As for Thor, I plan to hand him over to Fury and let Thor join the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency. With Thor's skills, as long as it's not a lurking or undercover mission, he can definitely handle it easily. And the tasks in the Bureau are also a good exercise for Thor. I believe that after joining the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Bureau, it won't take long for Thor to become more mature and calm. After hearing Howard's arrangement, Maria hesitated again and finally nodded in agreement. Well, what you said makes sense. Tony has grown up, and it's time for us to let go. But Thor, you have to explain it clearly to Fury. We arrange Thor to help Thor grow, but we must not arrange for him to do something dangerous. Otherwise, if something happens, we won't be able to follow him. Anna's family will explain. Hey, Tony, is Stark Industries holding such a major exhibition this time, hoping to change your image as an arms dealer among the public? Hey, Mr. Tony Stark, please look over here. What do you think about being called a contemporary Leonardo da Vinci? Mr. Stark, do you think that the weapons you invented have brought death and suffering to people in other parts of the world? Tony Stark, are you ashamed of your war fortune? In front of the Stark Industrial Headquarters building, countless media reporters and photographers frantically gathered here, just to get the headlines they wanted from the mouth of the famous genius inventor and playboy, Mr. Stark. What attracted them all here was Tony's recent announcement to the world through the company's media spokesperson that Stark Industries will restart the Stark Expo. And at this exhibition, in addition to the important achievements and technological achievements of Stark Industries in the past, the latest inventions of Tony Stark will also be displayed. The reason why reporters from major media have shown such strong interest in this news is because Howard Stark, the founder of Stark Industries, and his wife Maria Stark were assassinated by spies from the Furry Bear country. Stark Industries has not held the expo first planned by Howard for a full 10 years. However, in response to the reporters' questioning, all the microphones brought to Tony's mouth were blocked by his bodyguard and driver Happy Hogan. It seems that Tony Stark, who is usually full of witty words, has no intention of accepting interviews with the media today. Under the escort of Happy, Tony did not answer any questions from reporters throughout the process, and directly boarded the Rolls-Royce parked in front of the door and left the company headquarters. On the contrary, the company director, Obadiah Stane, who had been following Tony, greeted all the reporters in front of him after seeing Tony off, and began to provide the media with the news materials they needed in an obedient manner. That's it. Friends from the media, please be quiet. I have no comment on many of the questions you just asked. But regarding Tony's decision to restart the Stark Expo this time, I can tell you. The real reason for this is that Tony specifically requested an event to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the deaths of Mr. Howard Stark and Ms. Maria Stark. So in this exhibition, you can see the outstanding contributions and achievements that Ms. Maria Stark has made to the entire Stark industry and in the field of philanthropy, as well as various inventions created by Mr. Howard Stark in his life, some of which have never been announced or displayed to the outside world. The last is the various technological achievements developed by Tony Stark, the current head of Stark Industries, which symbolizes the inheritance of the Stark family. I believe that the content displayed at the expo will definitely open your eyes and satisfy your hearts. Okay, that's the end of my answer. Everyone, please go back and don't continue to crowd in front of Stark Industries. 10 years have passed since Howard and Maria escaped by feigning death, and the Earth has also entered the new millennium era. 10 years ago, after Howard and Maria arranged the future of Tony and Thor, they contacted Peggy Carter and Edwin Jarvis to secretly move them out of the ward. He also used the corpses parked in the hospital to create an explosion, pretending that the couple was assassinated by a spy. However, after successfully escaping, Howard and Maria did not just leave the United States. Howard used an electronic mask he researched to disguise himself and Maria into a completely new look. Then through Peggy Carter's relationship, he re-entered the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Bureau and became two researchers in the bureau. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. The enemy would never have thought that Howard and Maria, who had been judged dead, were still active in the Logistics Support Bureau. And Howard also plans to use this method to investigate the insider hidden in the bureau. He wants to personally find out the true identity of the other party in order to control the forces behind them. With the cooperation of director Peggy Carter, Howard was very confident at first that he could find out the insider in the shortest possible time, then resume his identity as Howard Stark, and return to normal life with Maria. But as his investigation continued, Howard discovered that things were far from simple as he imagined. The Strategic Homeland Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency, an organization established by him and Peggy, has been infiltrated into a sieve by the enemy. Howard didn't even know how many agents and researchers in the Bureau could be trusted besides him and Peggy. This is the result of the hard work of the founders for so many years, but they all ended up making wedding dresses for others. For 10 years, Howard found countless moles in the Bureau. Under the arrangements of Peggy Carter and the new director Nick Fury, who was later confirmed to be trustworthy, these moles were sent out to participate in various dangerous missions, and were eventually sacrificed in the mission. But even so, Howard found that the number of insiders in the Bureau was constantly increasing, even faster than they could be eliminated. And so far, Howard has not been able to find out who is the real mastermind behind these insiders. What kind of organization is it that trains them and infiltrates them into the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Bureau? The only thing that can bring some comfort to Howard is that at least they still have some trustworthy companions in the Bureau, and as he continues to screen, the number of these companions is still increasing. But Howard also knew that this would not work. The enemy has been sending their undercover agents in, and they must also use some other methods to attract new companions to join. For this purpose, Thor, who was assigned by Howard to have been an agent in the agency for 10 years, and another agent, Clint Barton, nicknamed Hawkeye, were sent to Budapest by Nick Fury to contact a man in the most famous big shot among spies. Budapest. I have to say that Thor and Hawkeye really met their opponents this time. Needless to say, Thor, in previous missions, he just picked up the hammer and rushed forward to deal with the enemy. Even for the remaining finishing work, Fury will arrange corresponding logistics personnel to help him clean up the finishing work. And Hawkeye Clint Barton, with his keen observation, super eyesight, and perfect archery skills, he is able to find the target location in the shortest time every time, and deliver the target to the opponent thousands of meters away. A fatal blow. However, their mission this time, whether it was the purpose of the mission or the difficulty of the target task, far exceeded their initial expectations. Their mission this time was to contact a spy from the Bear Country, nicknamed Black Widow, and bring him back to the Bureau unscathed. According to the information provided to them by Nick Fury, Black Widow, whose real name is Natasha Romanoff, has been trained in the Red Room, which specializes in training killers, since she was a child. She has also undergone special human body modifications and has combat power that is different from ordinary people. When Black Widow was only 11 years old, she and other spies infiltrated Ohio, the United States, in disguise as a family, and successfully completed the espionage mission. His career as a spy can be said to be very rich in experience. But even so, according to intelligence, Black Widow has never failed in any mission. The reason why Howard noticed the existence of the Red House and Black Widow and planned to recruit Black Widow into his camp all started with the mission Black Widow performed when she was 10 years old. Two other spies, disguised as the father and mother of the 11-year-old Black Widow, sneaked into a secret laboratory set up by the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency in Ohio. They stole the research results in that laboratory and burned the entire experimental base and the researchers in the laboratory to the ground. But when Howard traced the mysterious organization hidden in the Bureau, he accidentally discovered that the secret laboratory in Ohio was not ordered to be built by one of him and Peggy at all. And all the experiments conducted in that experimental base were never reported to them. Therefore, that experimental base was established in Ohio by that mysterious organization from the beginning to the end in the name of their Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency. Howard, who discovered this fact, definitely hoped to find key clues about the mysterious organization through the data taken away by spies in the laboratory. But unfortunately, after following this route for several years, Howard could not find what he wanted. On the contrary, during the investigation, the existence of the Red House and the Black Widow was discovered. The more in-depth information about the Red House, the more Howard felt a chill down his spine. The Red House will use genetic screening technology to find objects with genetic potential, and bring them back to the secret base for transformation and training in their infancy. These selected babies are all female. During the training process, they will undergo strict and cruel fighting, and after undergoing a sterilization operation called coming of age ceremony, they will be sent to senior government officials of various countries. Complete missions that are not limited to stealth, undercover and assassination. Only the best among this group of girls, the strongest trained by the Red House, are qualified to use the code name, Black Widow. It is obvious that among the generation of spies trained by the Red Room, Natasha Romanoff is the most powerful one. This is why Thor and Barton are so embarrassed about this mission. With keen intuition and superb counter-reconnaissance skills, Natasha Romanoff is always able to discover the existence of the two of them at the first time and escape from their sight. It's so annoying, TMD. Thor said happily, I can't kill but I can't, and I can't catch but how on earth are we going to do this mission? I'd say just hit her with a hammer. If she's not dead yet, then it's her fate. Why don't we take her back and give her to Fury? After 10 years of training as an agent, Thor seems to have not changed much, he is still so impulsive and irritable. But Clint Barton, his old buddy on the other side, knows very well that compared to the beginning, Thor is now a completely different person. At least he had persisted for more than 10 days before he finally couldn't bear it anymore. How can this not be regarded as progress? Save the words. Don't be impulsive, Thor. The director asked us to bring him back unscathed by name. You don't want your next salary to be deducted by the director because of this mission, right? When Barton mentioned the salary, Thor, who was still furious, immediately calmed down. There is no way, who makes him no longer the lofty prince of Asgard. Living on Earth, especially in a place like the United States, is really difficult without money. Moreover, he caused some troubles from time to time and required compensation. If next month's salary is deducted by Nick Fury, his life will definitely be in chaos. Okay, Barton, what do you think we should do? I don't know what Fury likes about this woman, so he insists on wooing her to join us. She doesn't look very strong either. He probably couldn't even take a punch from me. Quote, remember one thing, Thor. Never underestimate children, women, and the elderly. Those three types of people who can survive in the spy industry are not easy to mess with. And, that the guy's most powerful weapon is not her combat ability. Clint Barton said to Thor while recalling Natasha Romanoff's exquisite face. So what do we do next? Barton, I don't want to continue this hide-and-seek game anymore. Thor asked impatiently. I understand. The other party is very vigilant. Since there is no way to contact them directly, we should find another way. What do you mean? Thor was confused. Barton held his forehead helplessly. Have you carefully read the target person's information? Thor scratched the back of his head in embarrassment and said, Hey, I'll do a mission with you. I never look at those smelly and long things. You have the nerve to say that. Barton was completely speechless with Thor. Listen, according to the records, the training of spies like them in the Red House is not as gentle as our agency. Each of them can learn from the Red House. Those who left the house alive crawled out by stepping on the corpses of their companions. So for such an organization, if spies like them say that they don't have any resentment in their hearts, I will never believe it. I can even conclude that in the heart of the Black Widow, she must hate the Red House and the person in charge of the Red House, Dreykov. If at this time, someone gives her a chance to take revenge on the Red Room and Dreykov. Thor, do you think the other party is willing to betray his old employer? After hearing Barton's plan, Thor's eyes widened, and he pointed at Barton and said, Oh my God, man. You are so insidious. No, I meant to say that you are really a genius. Okay, Thor, I forgive you for your slip of the tongue just now. So what we have to do now is to find where she settled in Budapest, and then write our sincerity on a note and leave it to her. If she is really with me, it is suspected that they have revenge plans, so they will definitely contact us proactively. No problem, Barton. Thor nodded in agreement, and then looked at Barton in front of him without moving. Why are you looking at me like that? Barton couldn't help but step back half a step. I'm waiting for you to find out where the Black Widow settled in Budapest. You don't expect me to use my brain, do you? Thor said confidently. After hearing this, Barton held his forehead again and said, Sometimes I am really going to be pissed off by you, this stupid guy. I will find out the location, but the infiltration task will be left to you. B sharp B sharp B. Thor patted his chest vigorously and assured, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this kind of physical stuff." Barton is indeed a veteran agent in the Bureau. After some reasoning and planning, he quickly determined the hiding place of Natasha Romanoff. While the other person was still outside, Barton and Thor felt their destination as quickly as possible. "The rest is up to you, Thor," Barton said, patting Thor's huge deltoid muscles. Thor nodded and strode forward. The place Natasha Romanoff chose to stay is a very conspicuous 5-star hotel. But as the saying goes, a small hermit hides in the wild, a big hermit hides in the city. Such an unexpected choice actually became the best protective color for her as a spy. Thor's infiltration was very fast. Only a few minutes later, Thor had already returned to Barton and told him that the mission was completed. After all, after working as an agent for 10 years, Thor still learned something, although not much. However, Barton still had a hard time imagining what kind of stealth skills Thor could use to prevent him from being discovered by anyone as big as Thor. Barton definitely doesn't know that for Thor, as long as he knocks the other person unconscious before others see him, isn't this a perfect infiltration that will not be discovered by anyone? If Barton knew what Thor did, he would probably be so angry that he would vomit blood. But no matter what, their sincerity has been delivered. Next, let's see what kind of reaction Black Widow will have. Chapter 91. Loki, where have you been? Come to me quickly, otherwise you won't be able to get into my bed tonight. In Jotunheim, which is very far away from the earth, Sif's roar resounded throughout the palace. Even the guards guarding the palace couldn't help but shudder after hearing her voice. Since Loki unexpectedly resurrected from the dead and revealed the truth of the matter, Queen Sif, who was originally gentle, considerate, has become what she is now. And Loki's original titles of God of Mischief and God of Lies, which had disappeared for nearly 1,000 years, also appeared on him again. The famous people of the two countries did not react too violently to the revelation of the truth. After all, the whole incident wasted only 10 years of their time, which is indeed not long compared to their lifespans of thousands of years. Loki's the illusion weaved for them in through the looking glass is indeed quite exciting. Some ministers even suggested that Loki, a completely hypnotic ability, could be used to conduct actual military exercises. In this way, it can achieve a perfect exercise effect without causing any casualties. As for the public, they definitely hope that Loki can use this ability in entertainment. Who can resist such a thing as virtual reality? It's just that Loki doesn't have the leisure to care about the expectations of ministers and the people, because he is already too busy taking care of himself. After the truth was revealed, Loki was not unexpectedly criticized by the 4 women in the family, Frigga, Sif, Elsa and Anna. Only Odin, the initiator, remained silent and did not dare to join the conquest army. He even worked hard to continuously reduce his sense of existence to avoid being implicated in this criticism. Loki was abandoned by this shameless old guy, but under the threat of the other person's eyes full of warning, Loki did not dare to say anything to him. Alas, who let Odin be his old father? What else can Loki do? He can only bear the blame for this all by himself. So in the following days, Loki went directly from emperor to younger brother in this family. Even my 2 caring little cotton-padded jackets didn't pity this delicate flower like him. Loki can only constantly make up for the psychological damage he has caused to them through practical actions. The easiest thing to deal with here is definitely Loki's mother Frigga. After all, what mother would stay angry with her children? What's more, Loki is Frigga's favorite child all along, and everything Loki does is for the future of Thor and the future of Asgard. So after Loki shamelessly coaxed her for a few days, Frigga also forgave Loki for deceiving her feelings by faking death. A little more difficult to deal with than Frigga or Elsa and Anna, 2 of the 3 main protagonists in the entire plan. Especially after the training Loki prepared for them, both of them became more mature and smart. Loki's attempt to make his 2 daughters forgive him for what he did by coaxing little girls like before just won't work. To gain Elsa and Anna's forgiveness, Loki must make some tangible gestures. Let's have a frank talk, Anna. Faced with Loki's request to chat, Anna did not refuse and nodded in agreement. Okay, Dad. What do you want to talk to me about? How about we talk about how you spent your time in hell? What do you think? Loki was speechless on the spot. Obviously, Anna took the absolute initiative at the beginning of this conversation with her high IQ. In this case, Loki stopped beating around the bush and went straight to the point. Okay, Anna. It seems that you have indeed grown up. As a father, I am very happy about this. This also proves that I have set up for you two sisters. The test is still very useful. Now tell me, what conditions do I need to agree to in order for you to forgive me, this poor old father? Hearing Loki's question, Anna's face showed an unabashed smile of success. Since Dad you ask the question sincerely, I will tell you with mercy. To be honest, I don't know what your plans for my future are, but I won't be like Aisha. I will accept your arrangement honestly. What I long for is a free and adventurous life, so no matter what plan you originally had, Dad, I hope you can let me live according to my own wishes. Anna bravely expressed her thoughts to Loki, and Loki remained very calm about it. Loki has also experienced this as a person who wants his children to live according to their own ideas and plan their future according to their own wishes when they grow up, so he is naturally mentally prepared for it. In fact, let alone Anna, even if Elsa, whom he regarded as the heir to the throne of Jotunheim, told him that she was unwilling to accept such an arrangement, Loki would not be dissatisfied at all. As a reborn person from the free age of information explosion, Loki considers himself to be one of the most open-minded people in the 9 realms. Rather than becoming an arbitrary tyrant, Loki is more willing to respect the wishes of his 2 daughters and be their guide on the road to growth. Anna, if you have already decided, then follow your inner voice and move forward unswervingly on the path of your choice. No matter what time, as a father, I will always support you. Choose. Dad. Anna felt that her eyes suddenly became a little blurry. This was the first time since she had grown up that she had heard from her father, who loved to make pranks. Hearing such touching words, but this only represents my personal opinion. I can't help you in convincing your mother to agree with this matter. You know, in this family now, whatever I say has no effect. No problem, I've already taken care of Mom's side. Otherwise, Dad, why do you think I would make this request to you? If you agree, but Mom objects, wouldn't it be in vain? It's an opportunity. It seems that Anna, you have been prepared for a long time. Loki suddenly realized, in that case, you already have a plan for where to go after this, right? Anna nodded. She had no intention of hiding her future plans from her old father Loki, who had expressed support for her. Actually, I made an agreement with Carol when we were still on Earth. The 2 of us will explore the universe together. While completing our respective adventures, we will help the strong and the weak, and help those weak races oppressed by powerful civilizations to be able to live in peace. Live peacefully. Regarding Anna's idea, Loki nodded without making any comments. If he were still an ordinary person living in modern society in his previous life, then he might still agree with Anna's righteous actions. But after he was reborn as Loki and truly saw the dark forest law in the universe, he only hoped that his daughter could maintain her current innocence and simplicity after realizing the cruel truth of the universe in the future. Not long after the conversation between Anna and Loki ended, Anna said goodbye to her family, used the magic mark left on Carol, used the flying Thor to teleport to each other, and began an adventure for the 2 of them. Trip. As the older sister of the 2 sisters, Elsa did not put Loki in too much trouble and made a request that was not too difficult. However, Loki was quite surprised by the condition proposed by Elsa, that is, Elsa was willing to continue to be the queen of Jotunheim and manage the entire country. But, no matter when she wants to take a vacation, Loki must handle Jotunheim's affairs on her behalf until she feels she has had enough rest. The reason why this condition is not too difficult is because Loki has ruled Jotunheim for 1,000 years and is already familiar with how to handle these official affairs. The only risk is that Elsa's vacation has no time limit. That is to say, if Elsa wants to take a vacation of 1,000 or even 2,000 years, then Loki can only take over the duty honestly until you are willing to come back. Nuos, hey. Why do you feel that the development of things is getting further and further away from what I originally imagined? I was just too lazy to deal with these kingdom affairs anymore, so I wanted to let Aisha succeed. As a result, in the end, I may have to continue doing the same thing. I seem to be at a loss, Ming. After taking care of Frigga and her 2 daughters, the next step is Sif, the hardest nut to crack. And facts also prove that no matter what you do, never play with the feelings of a woman who loves you deeply. For 10 years, Loki had not been the same person after returning to his room at night. He can only silently accept the fate of being ridden by Sif. Even so, Sif, a female knight whose temperament changed drastically, has never returned to her previous appearance in daily life, which makes Loki miss the gentle and lovely goddess Sif. Just when Loki was still recalling the good life in the past, a roar resounded in the palace. Loki, where have you been? Come to me quickly, otherwise you will not be able to get into my bed today. Hey, here it is, we'll be there soon. Loki quickly stood up from the chair, and then flew away and Thor disappeared. You were the one who put this note in my room. It seems like you know me very well. In a wilderness that is surrounded in all directions but has a very complex environmental terrain, Black Widow Natasha Romanoff is looking at the 2 agents in front of her with vigilance. While carefully guarding against the opponent's sudden attack, Natasha Romanoff was also constantly observing the 2 of them. One of them was tall and muscular, and seemed to be an agent taking the strength route. The other agent, who is a head shorter, has a slender figure and should be more inclined to a technical fighting style. When they shook hands just now, she felt thick calluses on the index and middle fingers of his right hand. Natasha Romanoff guessed that the other party should be good at using weapons such as bows and arrows. When faced with Natasha Romanoff's questions, Thor was absolutely silent and put all the responsibility for the negotiation on Barton. I think before answering your question, the 2 of us should introduce ourselves first. Both of us come from an organization called the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency. You should have heard of the name of our organization. My code name is Hawkeye and my companion's code name is Thor. Until we reach mutual trust, you can call us by our code names. As for your question just now, to be honest, what we know about you is actually limited to your code name and mission experience recorded in the intelligence. Everything else is speculation beyond a reasonable doubt. Definitely, if you're willing to let us get to know you better, we'd be a great listener. After listening to Hawkeye's speech, Natasha Romanoff's eyebrows frowned with the word, chew on, unconsciously. The man in front of her who calls himself Hawkeye seems to be more difficult to deal with than she expected. But soon Natasha Romanoff's frown relaxed again. Since she has decided to take revenge on the Red House and Dreykov, her partners must be as strong as possible. I actually have nothing to say. Your guess is almost inseparable from the actual situation. As an orphan abandoned by my parents since childhood, I was taken in by Dreykov and trained in the Red House since I was a child. It wasn't until that mission in Ohio that I experienced a family atmosphere for the first time, but it was soon destroyed by Dreykov himself. All these years I have dreamed of killing Dreykov and liberating those poor girls in the Red Room. But I know very well that I can't do it on my own. The training in the Red Room will use psychological control to make everyone unable to resist Dreykov's orders. I originally thought I would struggle with this kind of life for the rest of my life, until the note you left for me yesterday appeared. I am willing to betray the Red House and join your organization. The only condition is that you help me kill Dreykov and liberate the girls controlled in the Red House. Regarding Natasha Romanoff's request, Barton naturally agreed without any hesitation. After all, helping Natasha Romanoff kill Dreykov would kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only did he complete the task of recruiting Natasha Romanoff, but he also eliminated a hostile espionage group that threatened the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency. And with the help of Natasha Romanoff, an insider, Barton doesn't think killing Dreykov will be too difficult. But before we set out to kill Dreykov, shouldn't we first resolve the psychological control he set for you? You have a solution, Natasha Romanoff confirmed to the 2 of them overjoyed. Yeah, Barton nodded and said firmly, in a mission I performed before AHCJ, I also encountered the problem of a companion being controlled by the enemy's special means. Why? But later, after I conducted a cognitive recalibration on him, he successfully got rid of the control and returned to normal. In that case, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and give me a cognitive recalibration, Natasha Romanoff said impatiently. Natasha Romanoff is not afraid of what the other party will do to her. Anyway, no matter which organization she is in, all she has to do is espionage work. Even if Hawkeye wanted to use some means to control her, it would be better than continuing to be controlled by Dreykov. But if Hawkeye really helps her solve the problem of psychological control, then she will make a lot of money. Anyway, no matter what the situation is, it is not a loss for Natasha Romanoff. It's just that Natasha Romanoff didn't expect that the cognitive recalibration that Hawkeye sounded quite complex would be so simple and crude. Hawkeye glanced at Thor beside him, and Thor took out a big hammer from behind, and then approached Natasha Romanoff's position. Hey. The cognitive recalibration you are talking about shouldn't be through this purely physical method. Shouldn't you at least have something to do with psychology? Natasha Romanoff continued to back away while complaining. Relax, Natasha Romanoff. Our colleague has proven that this method is simple and effective, and the results are immediate. Hawkeye comforted Natasha Romanoff with a gentle expression. But no matter who looks at Thor, a burly man with a sledgehammer in his hand, advancing towards him, he probably won't be able to relax. Hey, don't worry, little girl, I will make sure to be gentle when I strike. The way Thor said this was like a villain about to pick flowers. Then, he became a tragedy. Yes, Thor became a tragedy. How to say, although I am not sure whether Barton's cognitive recalibration therapy is effective, as an adventurous person, Natasha Romanoff is still willing to try it. But, as a veteran spy, Natasha Romanoff's various fighting skills have long been turned into muscle memory and integrated into her body. The moment Thor approached her, Natasha Romanoff instinctively clamped Thor's head with a fatal scissor kick. Then he stood up with a sit-up, shaking Thor's center of gravity and causing him to fall to the ground. Finally, taking advantage of the moment when Thor was distracted, Natasha Romanoff grabbed his wrist and transformed the movement into the famous crossbar in Jiu-Jitsu. Under Natasha Romanoff's unexpected combo, Thor's proud power had no room to display and was directly subdued. Unable to move, Thor could only slap the ground with his remaining hand, indicating that he had given up, and Natasha Romanoff loosened his restraints. Thor stood up again, grinning and rubbing the throat and shoulders that Natasha Romanoff had just locked on. Okay, I have to take back my previous evaluation of you. You are much stronger than you look. Thor had told Hawkeye before that Natasha Romanoff probably couldn't even take a punch from him. As a result, he turned around and was slapped in the face by Natasha Romanoff. Natasha Romanoff also said a little embarrassedly, "Sorry, these are all instinctive reactions." It's okay, just teach Thor a lesson. Then he won't dare to underestimate his mission goal in the future. Hawkeye looked at Thor and said sinisterly, "But your cognitive recalibration can only be solved after you return to the Bureau with us. Now we have to complete the task of solving Dreykov. Natasha Romanoff, do you have any plans?" Natasha Romanoff shook her head and said, "To be honest, I don't have a clue. Dreykov's whereabouts have always been mysterious, and even I can't determine his location." Hawkeye frowned. That would be a bit troublesome. If his location cannot be determined, the assassination mission will not be able to proceed. Hawkeye thought carefully and then continued to ask, "Since Dreykov himself is originally watertight, can we start with the relationships around him and find out his flaws?" This kind of mental thing has nothing to do with Thor. He was very self-aware and said nothing, leaving the space to the other two. After receiving Hawkeye's prompt, Natasha Romanoff carefully recalled it in her mind. After thinking for a while, she seemed to have thought of something, but she had a very hesitation expression on her face and did not reveal the information immediately. "What's wrong? You seem to be in trouble." Hawkeye was definitely keenly aware of the changes in Natasha Romanoff, so he asked. Natasha Romanoff was still thinking about hesitation and did not respond to Hawkeye's inquiry. After a long while, he finally struggled to open his mouth and said, "Dreykov also has a daughter who is less than 10 years old. I once heard from the guards around him that Dreykov would meet his daughter at a place every once in a while." Hawkeye, "So as long as we keep an eye on his daughter, we will be able to determine Dreykov's location." Natasha Romanoff nodded, agreeing with Hawkeye's statement. Hawkeye knew exactly what Natasha Romanoff was hesitating, and he comforted her. "Sometimes, in order to realize the justice in our hearts, some sacrifices are inevitable. I also know that Dreykov's daughter is innocent, but you have to think clearly, Natasha Romanoff. As long as Dreykov and the Red House are not eliminated, there will always be children like you who are persecuted by them. Quote. Compared to Natasha Romanoff, who is not yet an adult at the moment, Hawkeye, who has seen more darkness in the world, is obviously more decisive when decisions need to be made. Antonia Dreykov, this is her name. Under Hawkeye's guidance, Natasha Romanoff finally made her decision. Hawkeye nodded. I understand, leave the rest to me. The intelligence officers in our bureau will sort out her information for me. You go back and prepare carefully. It won't be long before we officially take action. Natasha Romanoff left with a heavy heart. At this time, Thor came closer and asked Hawkeye, is there no other way? Thor had already heard that the life of the girl named Antonia Dreykov was obviously the price they had to sacrifice to complete the Spike mission. Hawkeye shook his head silently. Thor was also lost in thought when he got the answer. After a long time, I heard Thor say, let that stingy fury deduct my salary. I, Thor, cannot complete this task. After saying that, Thor turned and left, leaving Hawkeye alone in the empty desert looking at the gloomy sky. Finally, I deceived the two of them together. In the royal palace of Jotunheim, Loki sat alone on the throne, enjoying this moment of solitude with a relaxed expression. As for the mother and daughter Sif and Aisha, with his unremitting efforts, the two finally started their long vacation. Loki planned a travel route for them from the 9 kingdoms all the way to the land of nothingness. According to his estimation, Sif and Elsa would have to visit all the attractions on this route and then return, year time. Without the oppression of Sif and Aisha, Loki can finally be freed from the oppression of his wife and the bullying of his daughter. As for Jotunheim's official duties, this is not easy for Loki. Wouldn't it be better to just select a few high-ranking ministers to form a cabinet and then leave all the troubles to the cabinet to handle? Anyway, as long as Loki's strength can maintain his absolute dominance over them, there will never be any need to worry about these ministers doing anything outrageous. Enjoying the long-lost free air, Loki did not intend to be a salty fish in Jotunheim. It is rare that he has regained his freedom. As the god of mischief, Loki is definitely going to cause trouble. And the destination he chose was naturally Midgard, which he had not been back to for a long time. Part of the reason why he chose Midgard as his next stop was because of the main mission that had been silent for a long time. It just so happens that Thor is in Midgard now, and has also joined the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency as an agent. Loki can create a little trouble at will and help Thor grow up faster. The more important reason is that Midgard, as the center of the 9 kingdoms, has opened the curtain of a new era. Next, more and more incredible events will happen on this small planet. How could Loki simply watch from the sidelines without participating in such an interesting thing? If you had better luck, you might be able to trigger some system side tasks and get 1 or 2 system rewards. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Midgard, Kamar Taj. Now that we have come to Earth, how can we not pay homage to the Sorcerer Supreme who is the Asgardian of Earth? Loki used the flying Thor to teleport to the Sorcerer Supreme holy place in Kamar Taj, and saw 2 round things, a big bald head rubbing a crystal ball that was bigger than her head. Needless to say, this big bald head is definitely the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. After all, in Kamar Taj, not everyone is qualified to have such a powerful hairstyle. As for the crystal ball in front of the Ancient One, after accidentally hearing the idea of telescope technique from Loki, the Ancient One tried it for a while, and then succeeded. With the help of the 3 holy places and the magic barrier network left by Agamotto, the Ancient One can observe the situation in any corner of the Earth through the crystal ball. Since then, Ancient One likes to use this crystal ball and the telescope to observe the increasing number of abnormal events on the Earth. What are you doing, Ancient One? Peeping at young boys taking a bath. Loki teased while approaching the crystal ball in front of the Ancient One. Loki casually glanced at the picture displayed in the crystal ball, and saw a naked, muscular man in the picture. This shocked him immediately. He looked at Ancient One in disbelief, pointed at her and said, I really didn't expect that you, Ancient One, are really this kind of person. Hurry up and share your magic spells with me. I want to see girls too, hehehehe. Ji looked at Loki with a confused look, stretched out his hand and pushed his head away. Why do you have time to come here? It's boring to stay in Jotunheim for so long, so why not come to Earth to have some fun? Loki is probably the only person who dares to say such words in front of the Ancient One, the Earth Asgardian. Looking for fun. Upon hearing that Loki was here to cause trouble on Earth, Ancient One, instead of being angry, showed a weird smile. That's just right. There is a ready-made entertainment nearby right now. Come and take a look at this. Loki raised his eyebrows with an interested expression on his face. Oh. Am I so lucky? I just came across such a good thing. Quote. With that said, Loki put his head in front of the crystal ball again. It's just that at this time, the picture in the crystal ball has changed. The protagonist in the picture is still the man that Loki accidentally caught a glimpse of just now, but his situation in the picture is completely different from before. The man was surrounded by several police cars, and behind the police cars were police officers with their guns aimed. The next second, the man who had no way to escape was put on a pair of silver bracelets under the strong suppression of the police. But just when everyone thought the matter was settled, the situation suddenly took a turn for the worse. The police, who had the advantage in numbers and weapons, were instantly at a disadvantage in front of the single and unarmed man. It could even be said that they were forced into a desperate situation. Because the handcuffed man, under the gaze of the group of policemen, transformed from a frail scholar who looked frail to a green monster with a height of more than 2 meters and strong muscles in the blink of an eye. In front of this green giant, the several-ton police car turned into a toy that he waved wantonly in his hands. The deadly bullets had no effect on his steel-like body. The police officers who had formed a siege could only flee with their heads in their hands, praying that they were not the last ones. Seeing this, Loki already knew the man's identity. At the same time, I am very satisfied with the fun Ancient One has found for me. This is a picture I took a photo of before. You can see the man in the picture, right? There is some incredible power in him. What do you think? Are you satisfied with the fun I found for you? Loki was not afraid of Ancient One's pride, and nodded generously. Definitely, I am very satisfied. So what is your purpose? You stared at him for so long, and then showed him to me as soon as I appeared. Your little thoughts can't hide it from the eyes of my god of lies and deceit. Regarding the fact that he was exposed by Loki, Ancient One did not show any embarrassment and still looked at Loki with a smile on his face. You said you want to have fun. Anyway, I have sent the person to you. It is up to you to decide whether you want to fall into my trap or not. Okay, Ancient One, you got me. How could I miss such an interesting thing? Tell me, what exactly do you want me to do? Ancient One had an unsurprising expression and said calmly, don't worry, it's not something that embarrasses you. I just hope that you can do the same as you did when you guided me to become a qualified sorcerer supreme. Show the lost child the way forward. At Ancient One's current age, there is no problem in calling him a child. After hearing the Ancient One's request, Loki finally understood the other party's true intention. Asking him to guide the Hulk was just an appearance. The Ancient One's real intention was to prepare for the threats that the Earth will face in the future. To put it more bluntly, Ancient One is explaining his own funeral. It seems that the person you have been waiting for 1,000 years is finally coming. Loki said bluntly. The Ancient One nodded. I still need to wait for a while before he welcomes his destiny. But it is also time to use this time to leave a seed for this planet that I have guarded for thousands of years. Loki once again set his sights on the man on the crystal ball. At the moment in the crystal ball, he was naked to the waist, sitting cross-legged on the futon with his eyes closed, meditating. Next to him was a llama wearing a red monk's robe and a colored monk's hat, constantly guiding him through words. I know, I will go there and turn this grumpy little boy into a polite gentleman like me. Quote. The smile on Ancient One's face disappeared instantly, and he looked at Loki very seriously and asked, is there any deviation in your understanding of yourself? The word, gentleman, has nothing to do with you, Loki. I'm already starting to regret letting you get in touch with this child. Quote. It's too late to regret, Ancient One. I already know where he is. For a person who needs to control his temper, Zhangchuan Buddhism can indeed provide him with some help. As soon as he finished speaking, Loki had already opened the portal based on the characteristics of the background in the crystal ball and left Kamar Taj. It's time to wake up, King of the Chamber. In the temple, Bruce Banner slowly opened his eyes. Sniffing the calming incense around him and listening to the faint sound of chanting in the distance, this was the first time Banner felt his inner peace had been gained since his escape. He was originally a promising professor at Culver University engaged in research in physics and biochemistry. He holds doctorates in 8 disciplines including medicine, biochemistry, nuclear physics, radiological physics, engineering, robotics, computer science and mathematics. 3 years ago, at the invitation of his girlfriend's father, General Thaddeus Ross, he joined a research group called the Biotechnology Power Enhancement Program, and was responsible for developing a serum that could prevent radiation poisoning. And it was precisely because of this project that his originally promising life took an unexpected turn, and he became the traitor wanted by the United States military. The so-called Biotechnology Power Enhancement Plan that General Thaddeus Ross talked about was not actually a serum to prevent radiation poisoning at all. Instead, it developed the superhero captain of the United States, a superhero that even Hydra is flocking to. Soldier Serum. General Ross had to stop his overt research project on the super soldier serum because his previous use of prisoners for human experiments was exposed. But in fact, he just moved the project secretly, in order to allow the project to continue smoothly, and found his daughter, Bemins, who was engaged in biological cytology research, and his daughter's boyfriend, who was studying nuclear physics, with Bruce Banner in biochemistry. Bruce Banner, who holds 8 doctorates, is undoubtedly a super genius beyond the scope of ordinary people's cognition. In just 1 year after being lured into the project by General Ross, Banner had made significant progress in the research of the serum. Due to limited project funds, in order to complete the research and development of this serum that can benefit the world as soon as possible, Dr. Banner decided to personally undergo human experiments. Then an accident occurred. During the human experiment of the serum, Bruce Banner absorbed excessive gamma-ray radiation. From a normal adult male, his body size skyrocketed into a violent man covered with green skin, giant. Having lost his self-awareness, he only relied on his instinctive desire for destruction, overturned the entire research equipment in the laboratory, and injured his girlfriend Betty and the project leader General Ross. When Dr. Banner recovered and woke up again, he found that he had arrived in the suburban woods hundreds of kilometers away from the laboratory. Because of this human experiment accident, Banner finally knew the true purpose of this biotechnology power enhancement plan. The research he has been conducting is not a good medicine to benefit the world at all, but a weapon that triggers war. Unable to accept this fact, Banner refused General Ross's request to use him as an experimental sample to continue research on the super soldier serum. However, he was slandered by the other party as a wanted criminal who betrayed the country on the grounds of stealing military secrets. So Dr. Banner had no choice but to start his own escape journey. In the process of escaping, Banner encountered many dangers that he had never encountered before in his life, and they were all finally solved by the monster hidden in his body through violence. This makes Dr. Banner even more afraid of the self-proclaimed Hulk in his body. He is worried that if one day Hulk's will completely dominates this body, who will be able to stop Hulk's destruction? In order to prevent himself from eventually becoming a monster who only cares about destruction, Banner fled to a wilderness somewhere in Greenland and decided to commit suicide by shooting himself. But the result did not let him get what he wanted. Just like every time his life was threatened before, this time Hulk took over his body without exception and spit out the bullets one by one. Banner, who failed to commit suicide, had no choice but to find other ways, hoping to suppress the Hulk in his body. On the one hand, we are actively conducting research to find a treatment method that can completely eliminate this mutation in ourselves. On the other hand, try to control your mood and avoid too drastic emotional changes. After so many transformations, Dr. Banner, a genius, has gradually figured out the triggering conditions for consciousness exchange between him and Hulk. When his own emotions fluctuate greatly, such as encountering life-threatening danger, being frightened by huge amounts of fright, or having strong anger, etc. These emotional changes will cause the Hulk hidden in the body to appear, turning him into a green monster who only knows destruction. So Dr. Banner began to search around the world for pharmaceutical ingredients that could treat him, as well as some methods that could help him maintain peace of mind for a long time. Dr. Banner's purpose in finding out about Zhang's Buddhism was to learn how the lamas could maintain a state of tranquility and peace. Judging from his current state, the effect of this method is still good. But Dr. Banner actually knows very well that he can gain short-term peace in his heart, which is closely related to the environment in which he lives. Once his whereabouts here are exposed and the troops sent by General Ross come here to pursue him, then his finally settled heart will definitely stir up trouble again. Saying goodbye to the temple Zen master who guided him in meditation training, Bruce Banner returned to his hiding place in Selenium, which also served as his laboratory for researching therapeutic drugs. When he came to the door of the hiding place, Banner did not immediately take out the key and open the door to enter. Instead, he first checked the small mechanisms he had set up before leaving. After several years of running away, Dr. Banner has become accustomed to clipping a piece of paper and a hair to the door every time before leaving the hiding place, and at the same time pressing the door handle behind the door at an angle. If any of these three little institutions are different from before he left when he comes back, then Banner will turn around and leave without saying a word. But today is obviously not the day for him to embark on the road to escape again. After Banner's inspection, there was no sign of punishment for the three agencies he set up. After checking the small mechanisms he had set up, Banner leaned on the door panel to check what was going on in the room. While Banner was collecting spare parts that could be used for experiments in various recycling bins, he adopted a stray dog and named him Ricky. Part of the reason he adopted Ricky when he was homeless was because Banner couldn't bear to see the dog sleeping on the street. Part of the reason is that Ricky acts as his danger alarm. If someone from the military sneaked into his hiding place while he was away and set up an ambush, then Banner will definitely not hear Ricky's movement in the room when he returns. And when Banner is sleeping soundly at night, Ricky, who has a keen sense of smell, will alert him if a stranger approaches. After confirming that everything was normal in Ricky's room, Banner finally opened the door and entered the room. After Banner put down what he was holding, he first poured some dog food into Ricky's food bowl, then put on his goggles and came to the experimental equipment he had assembled. Just as he was about to continue his research, a voice suddenly appeared in the room and almost scared the Hulk out of his body. "Hello, Bruce Banner." Dr. Banner didn't know who was calling his name. The only thing he was certain of was that he was very unfamiliar with the owner of the voice. And when he finally controlled his emotions and turned around stiffly, he saw an elegant and handsome young man on the sofa in the living room. The young man, who was a complete stranger to him, was holding Ricky in his arms, stroking the fur on Ricky's back while looking towards where he was. You, who are you? How did you get into my room?" At this moment, Dr. Banner even began to wonder, was the stray dog Ricky the trap set by the other party for him from the beginning? Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain why Ricky, who had always been very wary of strangers, would be lying in the arms of that strange young man so docilely and obediently. Facing Dr. Banner's extremely flustered questions, the young man always had a relaxed smile on his face, stood up gracefully and introduced himself. "My name is Loki Odinson. You can call me Lord Loki, and you can call me Kamisama. As for you asking how I got in fact I have been following you since you left the temple. You opened the door yourself and took me in, but you didn't notice it. Loki Odinson, Kamisama, do you think you are the god of trickery in the legend of Norse mythology?" Dr. Banner complained in his mind, and at the same time he already regarded Loki as a mentally ill patient with some abilities. "Mortal, I see offense in your eyes." As soon as Loki finished speaking, the heavens lock appeared in the sky again after a long absence. Before Banner had time to react, he was already tightly bound by the heavenly chains. Look at Loki standing in front of him, exuding an incomparable divine aura all over his body. At this moment, Dr. Banner felt that all the knowledge he had built up over 40 years had collapsed. Could it be? Are there really gods in this world? Regarding Dr. Banner's uncontrollable question, Luigi said to him condescendingly. "The so-called god, isn't it because my power is far more powerful than yours? If you can freely control the power in your body, you can become a god in the eyes of most people." Hearing Loki mention the Hulk in his body, Dr. Banner instantly became alert. "Your goal is Hulk. Don't be so excited, Bruce Banner. I don't want to make too much noise at once. Definitely, if you want to try my strength, then I will accompany you to the end. What exactly do you want to do? Why would someone like you come to me?" Dr. Banner asked calmly. After this period of practice, Banner can quickly adjust his emotions. Relax and don't worry. With my ability, if I really need to do something on this planet, I am confident that no one can stop me. The reason why I came to your door today actually has only one purpose, and that is to help you tame the little monster in your heart. How about it? Do you want to accept help from me, a stranger of unknown origin? Banner looked at the confident smile on Luigi's face, and the chains wrapped around his body showed a wry smile, and said, "Do I still have a choice? Do I still have a choice?" Dr. Banner said with a wry smile. "Definitely not," Loki replied matter-of-factly. "You don't have to feel aggrieved. I have delivered all the great benefits to you personally. If you reject me, where do you want my face to go? Besides, the person who asked me to come over to help you should be regarded as someone like your ancestors. There is nothing in you that is worthy of my covetousness. You can treat it as a kind of care and concern from the elders to the younger ones, and feel at ease. Just accept it and that's it." Banner has no clue as to who this ancestor-like figure in Loki's words is. After all, the power Loki showed in front of him was beyond his original understanding. Banner couldn't figure out how he came into contact with such a magical big shot even if he thought about it. But he knew that Loki was right, there was nothing in him worthy of being valued by the other party. Even the monster in his body that only knows destruction, judging from his current observations, is no match for Loki. In this case, if the other party can really help him solve the hidden dangers caused by Hulk, it will be a huge benefit that he cannot refuse. "I understand, Lord Loki. Please help me to destroy the monster hidden in my body." After some serious thinking, Dr. Banner finally made a sincere plea to Luigi. Seeing Banner's performance, Loki nodded with satisfaction and untied the heavenly locks from binding him. "As for this, I will definitely help you, but..." Loki looked at Banner with an expression that was half smiling but not smiling. "But what?" Banner asked nervously. "Is it related to whether he could return to normal and return to his previous peaceful life? But it's not to help you eliminate the Hulk in your body, but to help you completely take the power brought by the Hulk into your own hands." Loki's answer made the originally nervous Banner's eyes widen in an instant, and his mouth opened so wide in shock that he could almost fit a fist into it. "No, Lord Loki, I'm just a scientist with a little cleverness and wisdom. I just want to peacefully go back to the ordinary life of doing scientific research during the day and working as a prostitute at night. I don't need to master it at all. Such destructive power is huge amounts of ability." But as soon as Banner finished speaking, Loki's eyes became sharp when he looked at him. Loki's whole body was full of oppressive aura, so scared that Banner didn't dare to look directly into his eyes, and his neck and back slowly bowed unconsciously. "This is not up to you, Bruce Banner. Although the birth of this power in your body is an accident for you, it can even be said to be a disaster that comes from heaven. But its original existence is of great significance to the world and dimension you live in that you cannot imagine. If you think you don't need this power, it's just that you haven't met the time when you need it. Only when you truly experience the despair of being unable to fight back will you truly understand the meaning and value of Hulk to you." Loki's words are profound, but based on Dr. Banner's current experience, he cannot understand the true meaning. But before that, Banner had learned one thing: he had no choice. "Okay, Master Loki, you have the final say on all this, as long as the big guy inside me can't come out and smash things anytime and anywhere. Otherwise, the state of being frightened all the time is really too despairing. Already. This is definitely, if this power cannot be used according to your will, how can it be called complete control? One day you will understand what a wise decision you made today," Loki said, taking out a very simple-looking wooden mask from the space of the king's treasure. It was in order to hide his true identity when doing things in the universe that he found the dwarf king Ikki to make it from the branches of the world tree. That exclusive mask. However, since Loki sat on the throne of Jotunheim, the opportunities to use this mask can be said to be very few. In addition, with Loki's current strength, there is really no need to hide his identity in whatever he wants to do. Because he can count the things and people that can threaten him with both hands. As long as Loki doesn't seek death, no one will dare to do anything to him even if he does something a little too much. And the reason why he took out this wooden mask that he had forgotten in the corner of the king's treasure for a long time was definitely to help Banner solve the coexistence problem between him and Haushu. In fact, the method that Loki planned to use on Dr. Banner was something he learned from Odin. Before Odin exiled Thor to Midgard, he used a special magic to deprive Thor of his power as Thor, and sealed his power into Mjolnir, who was also taken back by him. So from then on, Mjolnir's hammer had a spell composed of runes. Whoever holds this hammer and deserves it will have the power of Thor. It was inspired by Thor's successful case that Loki got the inspiration to deal with Banner's Hulk power. Loki plans to use the same method to seal the Hulk power in Banner into this wooden mask, which is an artifact made of the branches of the world and is used to carry the 5 Hulks in Banner. Then by setting a spell on the wooden mask, Banner can use the magic on the mask to use this power under controllable conditions. Relax, Banner. What is going to happen to you next may make you feel a little painful, but don't worry, this is normal. Because I will use magic to seal the power of Hulk in your body. Banner nodded when he heard this, but there was no fear in his expression. No problem, compared to the mental torture, I can completely endure the physical pain. What's more, this pain is only temporary. Banner, I agree with what you just said. You are awesome, I give you a thumbs up. Loki made a cool expression like a ghost and gave Dr. Banner a thumbs up. Then are you ready now? If you are ready, I will start to seal the power of the vast beam in your body. Right. Banner said firmly, I'm ready. As Banner finished speaking, the entire room began to fall into silence. Even the dog Ricky seemed to feel the tense atmosphere and carefully slowed down his breathing. Loki held the wooden mask in his left hand, and lightly pressed Banner's forehead with his right hand. Then a powerful magic power rose from his body. He and Banner were instantly enveloped in a dark green halo, making this scene it looks extremely weird. Soon, the expression on Banner's face changed from firm at the beginning, to wavering, and finally turned into painful and ferocious. From Dr. Banner's constantly trembling Adam's apple, we can tell how shrill his screams of pain were. However, due to Loki's magical isolation, the whole room was still as quiet as a needle drop, as if Dr. Banner was performing a pantomime at the moment. But fortunately, due to the huge amounts of strength gap between the two, it did not take too long to seal the Hulk power in Banner's body. Gradually, the dark green surrounding Dr. Banner began to fade, until it finally disappeared completely. On the other side, the wooden mask held by Loki in his left hand was completely opposite to Banner. The light emanating from the mask shines brighter and brighter, and the thick dark green even has a tendency to develop into black. But under Loki's control, the power wrapped around the wooden mask began to gradually converge, and was eventually completely compressed into the mask. As the light on the wooden mask disappeared, the entire sealing process reached a crucial step. Loki put the mask to his mouth and began to whisper the spell he had set for the mask. Anyone with a childlike heart who wears this mask will be blessed by the god of mischief. As the words fell, strange runes appeared on the wooden mask, and they were constantly intertwined, gradually splicing together a Trask pattern. As the pattern slowly faded and disappeared, the seal this time was finally completed. From then on, anyone with a childlike heart can use the power of Hulk sealed in the mask after wearing this mask cast by Loki. Definitely, Loki has made some restrictions on this power. Otherwise, in his original state where he only knows how to smash things, he is not worthy of being called the god of mischief. Under Loki's transformation, users who meet the spell's conditions will have their childlike innocence magnified to the greatest extent after putting on the mask. Under this condition, Hulk's power will be controlled by his childish innocence and become a super ability capable of accomplishing all kinds of mischief. To put it simply, it gives the wearer the ability to be like a funny animated character. You know, among the various works created by human imagination, the strongest character has never been the superhero but the protagonist of funny animations. Because the protagonists of the funny animation can not only violate various physical laws and dance on Newton's coffin, but no matter what kind of fatal injuries they suffer, they will never cause trouble. Including but not limited to turning the body like rubber to avoid bullets, splitting a tree with the crotch, swallowing a bomb in the stomach and surviving unharmed after the explosion, etc. As for why Loki uses innocence as a filtering condition for users, that's because the seal Loki performed on Dr. Banner this time only sealed Hulk's power, but not Hulk's consciousness. It's not that Loki doesn't want to seal Hulk's consciousness as well, but in terms of the effect of this magic, it's really impossible. However, due to the loss of that powerful destructive power, it is basically impossible for Hulk's consciousness to compete with Banner's original consciousness for control of the body. In this case, it doesn't matter. On the other hand, Loki can also use this as a condition for turning on the mask ability. Hulk, who was born in Dr. Banner's body, appears to be so violent. He only wants to destroy when he appears. To put it bluntly, it means that a child has lost his temper after being taken care of for too long. After finally coming out, he will naturally have fun. In this way, even if Dr. Banner accidentally loses the mask, there will be no irreparable consequences. Adults have lost their innocence and cannot activate the ability of the mask, and children with innocence, even if they can use the mask, what evil intentions can they have? If there is any trouble at that time, Loki will tell Howard and ask him to leave it to Thor to deal with it. He was going to cause trouble for Thor anyway. Is it over yet? Dr. Banner asked Loki with expectant eyes. It's over. The seal went very smoothly. You don't have to control your emotions now. When Loki answered in the affirmative, Dr. Banner was beyond excited. Finally after such a long time, I can laugh when I am happy, cry when I am sad, and get furious when I am angry. Although due to long-term depression, Banner has even forgotten what kind of expression he should make when he is happy. But from the tears of joy in the corners of his eyes, we knew that his soul had been truly liberated. Okay, if you want to cry, wait until I leave, then hide in the quilt and cry alone. Now let's try this first. I have to confirm whether the last spell I cast was successful. Loki said, placing the mask in his hand that was originally ordinary, but now has become a real artifact, into the hands of Dr. Banner. Looking at the mask Loki handed him, to be honest, Dr. Banner was a little hesitant about wearing it. He was worried that after putting on the mask, he would become the out-of-control and violent Hulk again. But after he saw the affirmative look from Loki, he finally put aside his worries and simply put the mask on his face. Then Dr. Banner felt that the moment the mask came close to his face, a strong suction force suddenly appeared, allowing the entire mask to stick firmly to his face without any fixing measures. After putting on the mask, Banner felt that the most obvious change on his body was that his mentality seemed to become younger. All the pressure on my heart has been swept away. The mature heart that originally viewed the world without any disturbance is now rekindled with curiosity about the world. While Dr. Banner was feeling the changes in his mentality, what he didn't realize was that his appearance was also undergoing huge amounts of changes. After putting on the mask, Banner, blessed by the god of mischief, began to spin crazily like a character in a funny cartoon. After a crazy whirlwind spin, he had transformed from the desperate fugitive just now into a weirdo with a green head and a yellow suit. Definitely, the most outstanding thing is his white teeth. Compared with him, those celebrities who had porcelain teeth suddenly looked normal. In addition, the strong magic power fluctuations emanating from Banner cannot be ignored. This magical power is so powerful that it has almost reached the level of level sub-Godfather. According to the characteristics of Hulk's power, the stronger the emotion, the more powerful it is. If Banner can fully release the Hulk personality in his heart, it will not be difficult to break through this limit. Woohoo, I feel great now. Lord Loki, this feels so good. I can't wait to play a prank to celebrate my new victory today. As the Hulk personality, which symbolizes the inner child, is inspired by the power of the mask, Banner's personality is still the master of this body, but he is completely different from his former self in terms of his behavior and speech. That's great. Those pursuers who have been following you still follow you and show up as promised. Just use the strength you have now to leave a deep impression on them. Bar. Hearing this, the green-headed Banner was so happy that he grinned from the corners of his mouth to the back of his ears. This was not an exaggeration, but a true grin. Really, that's great. Next I want to spend more time on pranks. If everyone can be like me, then I think this thing, tie panty oil. After saying that, Banner jumped out of the window of the room. Under the influence of gravity acceleration, he threw himself directly into the street and fell to the ground. And in front of him were General Ross's pursuers who had followed him here. They were just about to surround the entire building when they saw a green-headed monster fall from the sky and land in front of them. But the surprising thing is that this weird-looking guy did not fall to pieces like a normal person, but just like a funny character in the animation, he fell directly into a piece of paper. And what happened next was even more terrifying. The pursuers saw with their own eyes that the green-headed monster that had been smashed into pieces of paper pulled itself up from the ground in a manner that completely violated the laws of physics. The green-headed monster pulled his head with his hands and muttered, "Look at me, I jumped into the street, ha 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 ha." With his weird laughter, the paper-like body also rebounded like rubber, returning to the physical state that a normal person should have. This green-headed monster is naturally Bruce Banner, whom General Ross ordered the soldiers to hunt down. But the soldiers never imagined that this kind of scene, which only existed in cartoons, would one day happen before their eyes. Several of the soldiers who couldn't bear the stimulation even pulled the trigger involuntarily. Huge amounts of bullets with lethal power were fired from the individual rifles in their hands, heading straight for Dr. Banner's vitals. But Banner, who has obtained the super ability granted by the mask, is obviously no longer a group of characters that ordinary people can deal with using firearms. The bullet entered Dr. Banner's body, causing his weird green face to show a look of pain. But with his artificial performance, anyone with some intelligence can see that the bullet just now was not able to cause him any harm. Sure enough, in the next second, Banner's tongue kept moving in his mouth, and then the bullets that had just been shot into his body were spit out from his mouth one after another. Well, this smell is really good. Guys, I have felt your enthusiasm. Now, it's my turn. After saying that, under the horrified eyes of the soldiers, Dr. Banner took out 2 huge amounts of Gatling guns directly from his crotch with his left and right hands. Seeing these 2 big guys appear, those soldiers were frightened on the spot. How could they have the courage to continue to fight against the weirdo in front of them? 10 of them dropped their weapons and ran away. But all this was actually just a prank by Dr. Banner to scare them. After he pulled the trigger of the Gatling gun in his hand, the expected fire did not appear in the barrel, but colorful streamers and ribbons were sprayed out. Golden fireworks. Ta-da! But just when Dr. Banner was proud that his prank had succeeded, a grenade flew out of nowhere and landed at his feet. Oh, littering is not a good habit, man. Looking at the grenade at his feet, Dr. Banner's face still had the same smile, showing 2 rows of bright white teeth, without showing any panic or fear. With just a flick of his toe, the grenade on the ground without the safety catch was caught by Banner. Then Banner opened his mouth wide, threw the grenade into his mouth, and swallowed it in one gulp. It was as if what he was holding in his hand was not a grenade with the safety catch pulled off, but an egg with its shell peeled off. Bang! With a muffled sound, Banner's belly swelled instantly and then returned to its original shape. The black smoke that was constantly coming out of Song Yu's ears and nostrils proved that 10 grenades had indeed exploded in his stomach just now. What a bunch of naughty little cuties. I have to educate you well. Banner's face showed that exaggerated smile again, and then his whole person started to spin crazily like a whirlwind. As for the soldiers who had just tried to escape, all of them could not escape the fate of being captured by him under his sweep. Now that the children are all here, let's start class. Dr. Banner's voice sounded like a devil's whisper in the ears of each soldier. After the hurricane caused by Banner's high-speed rotation, the soldiers who originally wore military uniforms all changed into Boy Scout attire, and 10 of them sat neatly on elementary school-sized desks and chairs. In front of them, there was a huge blackboard that suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and Banner, a green-headed monster who had changed into a teacher's costume. Children, come on. What we are going to learn today is about hygiene, courtesy, and knowledge about garbage classification. Banner held the chalk in his right hand and swept it across the blackboard like a ghost, and then each knowledge point appeared neatly on the blackboard. And every time Banner finishes talking about a knowledge point, a soldier will be coasted into corresponding garbage by him, and then thrown into the corresponding classified trash can. Under the torture of Teacher Banner, the soldiers were all dizzy and completely lost their combat effectiveness. After the battle, Banner took off the wooden mask that gave him great power. After taking off the mask, Banner's mental state immediately returned to normal. I saw him standing there blankly, staring at the wooden mask in his hand. Even though everything that just happened was still vivid in his mind, Banner still couldn't believe that he had done those things. This mask is so scary. It must have controlled my mind. No, After Loki leaves, you must find a place to hide this thing. No one else can get this thing, and no matter what happens in the future, I will never use it again. Loki, since Rose's men have found their way here, I can no longer stay here. Banner said this as he returned to the room wearing a mask. After saying that, Banner was ready to pack his luggage and start his escape journey again. But at this moment, Loki put his hand on his shoulder, stopped him and said, "Have you forgotten that just now I sealed the Hulk power in your body into the mask? In other words, you have returned to normal and become an ordinary person now. If you want to return to your original life, you might as well wait here for Ross to come over and let him bring you back to paint. As long as he understands that neither your blood nor your tissue is of any value to him, and coupled with the relationship between you and his daughter, the title of traitor he has placed on you will no longer matter. Can I take it off? And you will naturally be able to return to your original life state naturally." Hearing what Loki said, Banner reacted, "Yes. I don't have to run away now." Suddenly enlightened, Banner scratched his head and looked at Loki. Hey, that. I have formed a habit before, and I can't change it for a while." Loki waved his hand and said nothing more. "Let's go, Banner. There are still many lost youths like you in this world, waiting for me, Lord Loki, to save them. The next thing will be solved by yourself." Loki waved goodbye and turned to leave. But all of this, including the previous reminder to Banner, was actually just a show played by Loki to show Banner. After all, what he promised to the Ancient One was to guide Banner on the right path, not to help Banner master the power in his body. Dr. Banner still does not realize the importance of strength and believes that as long as he returns to his past self, he can live his original life again. But the cruel reality is that regardless of whether he has the power of Hulk in his body, Ross, who is obsessed with the super soldier serum, will try his best to get what he wants from Banner. That's why Loki tricked Banner into throwing himself into a trap and following Rose back when he was about to pack up his things and run away. Loki wants to use General Ross to make Bruce Banner understand that when a person does not even have the ability to resist, he will lose the qualification to pursue even the simplest ordinary life. You can only become a piece of fish on someone else's chopping board and be slaughtered by others. During the time when Dr. Banner fell into the hands of General Ross and suffered, Loki did have one thing to accomplish. The successful sealing of Hulk's power on Banner proves that the sealing magic and unblocking spell used by Odin on Thor are indeed widely adaptable. So Loki planned to use the same method to add an amulet to Sif and his two daughters who were away from home. He decided to peel off some of the skills he had acquired from the system by completing tasks over the years, and then sealed them into noble phantasms and gave them to Sif, Elsa and Anna for use. This was considered reuse of waste. System, open my personal properties panel. Host, Loki. Bloodline, Giants of Jotunheim. Strength, level Godfather, later period early stage, middle stage, late stage, peak stage. Magic, Asgard magic, ability magic freeze, white magic, black magic. System skills, Kyoka Suigetsu, Devil Fruit, Freezing Power Kai, Ninja Genjutsu Kai, Mokobotomo, Kyoka Suigetsu, Complete Hypnotic Ability, King's Treasure. Self-created skills, Flying Thor series, Rasengan series, Sage Mode unfinished. The first skill that Loki decided to seal was King's Treasure. This ability looks very cool and powerful on the Golden Gilgamesh. But that's because in addition to King's Treasure, Gilgamesh also has a skill called Collector. Therefore, all treasures created by humans will be automatically collected by King's Treasure, unlike Loki who needs to complete system tasks and obtain them one by one. Coupled with the fact that he has now reached the late stage of level Godfather, King's Treasure most of the time just acts as a storage space for Loki, and has no effect on his original combat bonus. In this case, it would be better to strip off the skill of King's Treasure and give it to his youngest daughter Anna. Originally, the dress-up magic that Anna used was to use the King's Treasure as a medium to summon the treasure phantom in it. After obtaining the complete King's Treasure, Anna can use the noble phantasms in King's Treasure as she pleases. When facing a siege Ahi, Anna can also directly launch the noble phantasm in King's Treasure to strike the enemy in a wide area. This is definitely a huge amount of improvement for Anna's strength. The second ability that Loki plans to divest is Devil Fruit, Freezing Power Hyphenation Point Modification. To put it bluntly, this skill has two effects. One is the ability to create ice out of thin air. One is the ability to element itself. The ability to create ice out of thin air can be completely replaced by ability magic freeze for Loki, who is of the bloodline of giants of Jotunheim. As for the elemental ability, to be honest, it is not as useful as the skill flower in the mirror, moon in the water. Because Kyoka Suigetsu can not only make the enemy's attack miss, but can also be combined with the skill Kyoka Suigetsu complete hypnotic ability to form a combo, making the enemy hard to guard against. So Loki decided to separate this skill and put it in the hands of his eldest daughter Elsa. As a serious magician, Elsa is not a melee magician like Kamar Taj. Her biggest weakness is her melee ability. This is not very noticeable in low-end rounds. After all, the difference in strength is too big, and the enemy can't even get close to Aisha. But once she encounters a high-end game, Elsa's melee weakness will be easily targeted by the enemy. But if there is elemental ability, it will be different. Devil Fruit, freezing power modification, can not only strengthen Elsa's original ice and snow magic power, but also make up for her weakness in melee combat. Giving this skill to Aisha would kill two birds with one stone. As for the third and final skill that Loki plans to divest, it is ninjutsu, kai. After Loki obtains Mirror Flower, Water Moon Complete Hypnotic Ability, the effect of this skill can be completely replaced by Complete Hypnotic Ability. Moreover, Ninja Genjutsu, Kai originally had a similar effect to the deceptive magic he was best at. Whether in actual combat or pranks, it had little value to Loki today. It would be better to peel it off and give it to Sif. As a female war goddess with unparalleled melee combat, Sif's only shortcoming is probably that her methods are too single. Once the enemy is on guard and Sif cannot get close, she will be helpless. But with the assistance of ninjutsu genjutsu, Kai, Sif's combat wisdom can easily create flaws in the opponent's body, and then kill the enemy with one blow. In other words, Sif can switch between the three professions of warrior, magician, and assassin at any time according to different situations, and the flexibility of combat will be greatly increased. After selecting the three skills to be stripped, Loki selected several noble phantasms from the king's treasure to be used to carry the seal. In order to ensure the convenience of using skills, the precious phantoms selected by Loki are all lightweight and easy to carry. In this way, if the three of them suddenly encounter danger, they can use these skills more conveniently. And these three noble phantasms are Cleopatra's gold earrings that he selected for Sif, which seal the illusion of ninjutsu, kai. The crystal diamond necklace chosen for Elsa and sealed with devil fruit, freezing power change. As well as a pair of silver wristbands selected for Anna, with the king's treasure, skill sealed. In the Sierra Nevada mountains, there is an experimental base secretly built by General Ross for his biotechnology power enhancement plan. At the moment, Banner was lying on an experimental table, his hands and feet tightly bound by belts. Compared with when he parted with Loki a few days ago, Dr. Banner now looks just like the famous Void Boy. Not only did he look tired, his cheeks were sunken, but even his lips could not see a trace of blood. At this moment, a researcher wearing a white lab coat came to General Ross with a report and reported to him. "General, this is already the 23rd inspection, and we still haven't found any abnormalities in his cell tissue. So, is it true that he told me that he has cured his own mutation?" General Ross asked, but his eyes remained on Banner on the experimental table, without even glancing at the researcher next to him. "I'm afraid that's the case, General," the researcher replied tremblingly. As his voice fell, one could clearly feel that the air pressure in the surrounding environment had dropped a bit. General Ross's face was as dark as water, and his face became increasingly ugly. "This guy, how dare he destroy such a perfect weapon like this? Instruct me to go down and take out the serum formula and key data from that human experiment no matter what method you use." Awed by the aura of General Ross, the researcher couldn't help but take a step back, then lowered his head and agreed, "Yes, General." It turns out that Dr. Banner was immediately tied to the experimental table after he was brought back by General Ross. 23 blood and cell tissue samples were collected over several days. As for energy intake, it depends entirely on intravenous nutrient solution. It's no wonder that he became as weak as he is now in just a few days. If it were someone else who suffered the same treatment, he would probably have hated General Tross in his heart and wished that he would be torn into pieces if he could gain strength. But what should I say about Bruce Banner's brain circuit? It is indeed a bit different from ordinary people. Faced with what General Ross did to him, Banner, instead of being angry, always maintained an optimistic mood. Because according to his idea, once General Ross is completely sure that he no longer has what he wants, the other party will naturally let him go. At that time, he, Bruce Banner, can return to his previous life. But his mistake was that he believed too much in Loki's deception and overestimated the moral bottom line of General Ross. In order to realize his obsession with the super soldier serum, General Ross's spirit has already fallen into madness. Since Banner can't squeeze what he wants out of his body, he can search for it from the other person's memory and soul. As long as he can get what he wants, General Ross doesn't care whether Banner is dead or alive. However, just when Dr. Banner was about to be robbed, the alarm in the base suddenly sounded. Alert! Alert! A strange intruder appears at the entrance of the base. Once again, a strange intruder appears at the entrance of the base. The intruder is visually unarmed. Please dispatch the nearest armed personnel immediately to arrest him. When he heard the alarm broadcast, General Ross quickly picked up the walkie-talkie in his hand and ordered to the soldiers on duty in the control room. Immediately cut the surveillance screen of the intruder to my screen. I want to see who is this desperate guy who smelled the intruder and came to my territory. General Ross spoke in a very fierce tone, with murderous intent in his eyes. Obviously this intruder appeared in the wrong place at the wrong time, and today he may have to become General Ross's punching bag to vent his depressed mood. However, when the surveillance screen cut to his screen and General Ross saw the appearance of the intruder, he was stunned on the spot. Immediately afterwards, he answered the intercom with a panicked look on his face, and ordered to all the personnel in the base, "Listen, Lou, no one is allowed to hurt a hair of the intruder. You must bring her to me intact." The soldiers who received the order responded on the intercom, "Yes, General." The reason why General Ross's attitude changed so drastically was entirely because the intruder in the surveillance video was none other than his biological daughter, Ten Byleth. Without learning any fighting skills or carrying any weapons, Betty was definitely easily controlled in the face of strictly trained military soldiers. Under the escort of 4 armed soldiers on the left and right, Betty was brought to her father, General Ross. "How did you find this place? Do you know how dangerous your behavior is? If I hadn't discovered that the intruder was you, you would probably be a corpse by now." General Ross spoke in a very stern tone, but his eyes contained deep love for his daughter Betty. However, Betty did not accept this trick at all. When faced with her father's reprimand, she directly counterattacked. "Then just let your soldiers shoot me to death. Then I can go to heaven to reunite with my mother. And after a while, Banner will also be sent there by you, right?" Hearing Betty mention Bruce Banner, General Ross's eyes became sharper. "It turns out you came here because of him." "That's right. After I knew that Banner was caught by you, I found a friend in the Rising Tide organization, hacked into your private phone, and then locked the location of this base. Banner obviously did nothing wrong. All the accidents were because you concealed the true purpose of the experiment from us, which led to Banner turning into that terrible monster. Now that he has finally cured his mutated disease, why are you still unwilling to let him go?" Regarding his daughter's questioning, General Ross also rarely expressed his true feelings. "I can definitely let him go, but ask those terrorists, will they let those innocent people go? Don't forget how your mother died. And I will never allow such a thing to happen again to the land I protect. As long as my biotechnology power enhancement plan can successfully develop the super soldier serum, these terrorists will never be able to succeed from now on. Compared to the future of the entire country, the sacrifice of just one Bruce Banner is nothing to me. If you want me to let him go, you can, as long as you can convince him to hand over the serum formula and experimental data from the previous human experiment and help me continue to complete subsequent experiments. After the serum is developed, I will naturally keep my promise and let him leave safely." "Woo, woo, woo. Run away, Betty. Get out of here." In the experimental base in the Sierra Nevada mountains, piercing sirens are heard all the time. Banner held Betty's hand, and the two of them ran towards the exit of the base. Behind them were smoke-filled fires and gunshots, as well as huge amounts of shock and terrifying screams. Finally, with the unremitting efforts of the two, they finally saw the exit of the base. As much as inside the base, at the moment it was chaos outside. Because just now, Banner, Betty, and Dr. Samuel Stern, the professor of cell biology that General Ross found from Girvan College, together created a terrifying monster. It was a monster in the true sense that was bigger than Hulk, more terrifying in appearance, and more destructive than Hulk. Abomination, this was the code name General Ross chose for it as soon as it appeared. For such a monster that releases monstrous hatred into the world all the time, there is no name more suitable for it than Abomination. Banner and Betty boarded the armed helicopter where General Ross was located. As for the other soldiers who had evacuated from the base, some got on the transport vehicle to escort important supplies and materials to evacuate quickly. The other group got on armored vehicles and surrounded the exit of the base. As soon as the completely out of control Abomination appeared in sight, they immediately launched a siege. The location General Ross chose to build this base is very remote, and choosing to capture Abomination here is undoubtedly the best choice. Once Abomination breaks through the blockade and breaks into nearby towns or even cities, General Ross will be in big trouble. His biotechnology power enhancement plan had already been banned by superiors. The reason why this project can continue to be carried out today is entirely due to the connections Ross has accumulated over the years in the military. It was able to move forward in secret while the top brass turned a blind eye. But if hatred causes big trouble that is difficult to end, then those high-level officials will never give Ross any face in order to keep their reputation. General Ross will lose all the resources and relationships he has accumulated in the military over the years, and the biotech power enhancement program will also be completely banned. Therefore, although General Ross on the helicopter still maintained his calm appearance, in fact, he was already panicking in his heart. He kept praying in his heart, hoping that the soldiers below could quickly subdue the hatred. However, things did not develop in the direction General Ross expected. Faced with the military's huge amounts of lethality of machine guns and artillery, Abomination showed utter contempt. The feeling of these weapons hitting him was no different to Abomination than being bitten by a mosquito. The only effect may be that at the moment the ammunition explodes, Abomination's vision will be affected. But in front of his powerful brute force, just a clap of his hands dispersed all the smoke and dust flying in front of his eyes. As for the armored vehicles used by the soldiers to protect themselves, they were as fragile as paper. Hatred just grabbed it and tore off the armor on the car. What followed was a one-sided, crazy massacre. Looking at the tragic death of the soldiers below, even Banner, who had been hunted and detained by them, could only feel deep sympathy for them at this moment. At the same time, Banner also felt strong regret for helping others do evil for his own benefit and creating this hateful monster. Soldier, take us out of here. What happens next is beyond what we can handle. I will contact professionals to handle it. Seeing that all the troops deployed below were killed, in order to ensure his own safety, General Ross issued the order to evacuate without hesitation. As for the professionals General Ross spoke of, they are naturally the Strategic Homeland Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency, which is responsible for handling such extraordinary events. In fact, because General Ross's biotechnology power enhancement plan involves the research of super soldier serum, it has been closely watched by S.H.I.E.L.D. since the beginning of the 10th century. Although I don't know whether the person responsible for tracking this matter is the real S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel or the Hydra lurking in S.H.I.E.L.D. Here is SBTV's coverage from the scene. 5 days have passed since the monster codenamed Abomination appeared, but neither the police nor the military are able to do anything about this monster. Abomination is simply a tireless monster. In the past 5 days, 10 cities and 15 towns have been paralyzed due to its destruction. Because hate, the number of dead and injured soldiers and innocent people is even more numerous. Are all these disasters a punishment from God or a loss of morality? Our station will continue to bring you follow-up reports of the incident. We also hope that the relevant government departments can eliminate the impact of hate as soon as possible. 5 full days have passed since the birth of Abomination, and Banner and Betty returned to the house where they once lived together. This is not because General Ross keeps his promise, but the main reason is because he has too much time to take care of himself now, so he can't take care of Banner. But Dr. Banner, who finally got his wish, was in a very low mood during this period. As one of the initiators of the birth of Abomination, the more killings Abomination committed, the more Banner felt that his sin was serious, and he suffered from remorse and was very tormented in his heart. In the nights of the past few days, Banner, who had been completely insomniac, could only hide in the study, frantically searching for information, trying to find a way to eliminate the mutation in Abomination. But when this problem happened to him before, Banner spent several years without any clue. How could he find a solution in just a few days of research now? He did this just to make himself feel better and to comfort himself. In fact, it's not like Banner has never thought about wearing the magical mask given to him by Loki, and using the rich power of the mask to defeat hatred. But when he was controlled by Ross, the mask was taken away by the soldiers who were guarding him. At the moment, this mask should be buried deep in the ruins of the base destroyed by hatred, just like other experimental equipment in the base. It was only then that Banner truly began to understand the meaning of what Loki had said to him. While Banner kept repenting and praying in his heart, there was a knock on the door. Dr. Banner got up, walked to the door, opened the door, and saw a slightly bald middle-aged man with a kind smile on his face. And behind the other party, there is a younger, tall and muscular blonde man. Hello, my name is Phil Coulson, and this is my colleague Thor Odinson behind me. We are both agents from the Homeland Strategic Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency. Are you Dr. Bruce Banner? Quote. The bald middle-aged man asked politely. Yes, I am Bruce Banner. What do you want to see me for? Banner looked at the two people in front of him strangely, because he had never heard of the Strategic Homeland Attack Defense and Logistics Support Agency, and he was wondering why the other party came to him. But soon the bald middle-aged man who called himself Phil Coulson solved Banner's doubts. It's about hate. We are currently dealing with hate. Then I learned from General Ross that this monster was created by you, Betty Ross, and Samuel Stern. So the two of us came here today mainly to find out from you and Ms. Betty whether there are any weaknesses in Abomination that can be targeted. If we can provide the most advanced experimental equipment, is there any way for you to develop a therapeutic serum in a short time? Regarding the two questions raised by Phil Coulson, Banner shook his head without thinking. Betty, she just went out and should wait a while before coming back. But as far as I know, there is nothing that can be called a weakness in Abomination. And even if you can provide research equipment, if you want to develop a serum that can cure hatred, it will be impossible within a few years. But, sensing the hesitation in Dr. Banner's tone, Phil Coulson quickly asked, but what? Dr. Banner, do you have a way to end this disaster? Banner did not answer Phil Coulson's question immediately, but was silent for a while before making up his mind and said, I do have a solution to the current problem, but I need some help from you. And you must promise not to let others know that I did this. Phil Coulson. This, although it is not yet known what method Dr. Banner has to solve hatred, judging from Phil Coulson's rich experience as an agent, Dr. Banner is not lying. Dr. Banner, there is nothing wrong with your first request. As long as the problem can be solved, we at SHIELD can provide you with anything you need. As for the second condition you put forward, I need to ask our director for instructions before I can reply to you. Quote. This is the situation. Director, how should we respond to Bruce Banner? In Dr. Banner's study, Agent Phil Coulson temporarily borrowed it and reported what just happened to SHIELD Director Nick Fury on the other end of the communicator. Washington, D.C., SHIELD Headquarters Tri-Curved Wing Building. After listening to Phil Coulson's narration, Fury did not make a decision immediately, but fell into intense thinking. The trouble caused by hatred in the city is really making SHIELD, who took over this matter, very anxious. Faced with a thick-skinned and powerful Abomination, SHIELD has no good way to deal with it, either in terms of attack or defense. Fury originally planned to seek help from the super genius Tony Stark, but this famous playboy is now worried about the palladium poisoning problem caused by the arc reactor on his chest, and he has no extra energy at all to hate this thing. Just when Fury was worried about this, he didn't expect that Phil Coulson actually sent him good news. Bruce Banner actually had a way to help them solve the hate problem. But Nick Fury, who was accustomed to thinking before he acted, was not dazzled by this sudden surprise. Instead, he began to carefully analyze what methods Banner had to deal with hatred. Based on SHIELD's current information, if you think about it carefully, the one most likely to succeed is Hulk, the Hulk that Banner once transformed into. But when Ross explained the situation before, he had already said that Banner's mutation had been cured. In this case, Banner should not be able to transform into Hulk to deal with Abomination. Wait a minute, there is a contradiction in the logic here. Bruce Banner clearly told Phil Coulson that it would take at least several years to produce the therapeutic serum. But if the therapeutic serum has not been successfully developed, how did Banner's condition return to normal? Unless someone else helps Banner solve the mutation in his body. If it's true as I guessed, Banner asked us to keep it a secret. Is it because he doesn't want the identity of this mysterious person to be revealed? Fury felt that he had grasped the key to this matter. After careful analysis and thinking, Fury once again connected to the communication with Phil Coulson and instructed him, "You can agree to any conditions proposed by Bruce Banner. After this mission is completed, you can settle the matter. Please report it to me carefully." After ending the communication, Fury rubbed his temples with a tired look on his face. S.H.I.E.L.D. has been dealing with too many troubles recently. Not to mention the mysterious organization hidden in S.H.I.E.L.D. The two founders, Peggy Carter and Howard, have worked hard for more than 10 years but failed to dig out this organization. Then he recently met Tony Stark again. The Iron Man, who was included in his candidate list for the Avengers project, has a physical problem. And it was caused by this guy Ross, who hated this big trouble that made the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. helpless. Finally, Anna and Carol recently returned to Earth to remove the Tesseract that had been in the stomach of the element-eating beast for more than 20 years. Thinking of this, I admire Peggy Carter, the old leader, even more. I really don't know how the other party managed to support an organization as big as S.H.I.E.L.D. by himself in an era when information technology was not so developed. But this time the Abomination thing was a wake-up call for me. It seems that I need to discuss it with Howard as soon as possible. Now that the Tesseract has returned to our hands, it is time to restart the Pegasus project. Asterisk 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 asterisk. On the other side, in the living room of Dr. Banner's house. Phil Coulson walked out of the study and nodded towards Banner and said, "Dr. Banner, our director agreed to the 2 conditions you proposed. Regarding everything you did in this incident, besides me, Thor, and apart from our director, no one else will know about this." Okay. Although the confidentiality promised by S.H.I.E.L.D. was still somewhat different from what Banner imagined, he still reluctantly accepted the result. "Wait until Betty comes back. After I explain the matter to her, I will leave with you. But before that, there is something that I need to ask your people to find for me in the ruins of the experimental base in the Sierra Nevada mountains." "What?" Phil Coulson asked. Since Banner mentioned this item at this time, it proves that it is definitely the key to Dr. Banner's solution to hatred. Banner thought about how to answer Phil Coulson's question. In the end, he did not speak. Instead, he turned around and picked up a pen and a pad on the table nearby. Banner quickly sketched a few strokes in the notebook, then tore off the note and handed it to Phil Coulson. It was a wooden mask that looked like this. "When I was first brought to the base, the soldiers who escorted me took it away, so I don't know where they put the mask. But if you want to solve the trouble caused by hatred, then please find this wooden mask as soon as possible and send it to me. As long as we have it, all problems will be solved." After listening to Dr. Banner's description, Phil Coulson was a little dubious. S.H.I.E.L.D. had so many powerful agents and weapons that they couldn't do anything with Abomination. Just relying on such a simple-looking wooden mask could really solve their current predicament. Although I don't know what kind of medicine Dr. Banner is selling in his gourd, since he has promised to fulfill his request, Phil Coulson will try his best to fulfill it no matter how strange the request sounds. Just when Dr. Banner and S.H.I.E.L.D. reached a cooperation due to the issue of aversion, Loki, who had returned to Earth, did not focus on Banner at the moment. Because when he reunited with his old friend Howard after a long separation, he accepted a request from Howard. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.